Chapter 1269. Five Lakes Four Seas had always been like this. He was famous for being a nice guy who never argued with others. In the face of mysterious heaven and earth's provocation, he only smiled slightly. Even though mysterious heaven and earth already knew Five Lakes Four Seas' temper, he was still very unhappy when he saw Five Lakes Four Seas' attitude. He pointed at Five Lakes Four Seas and shouted, "Little Five, do you dare to have a match with me?" "Sure." Five Lakes Four Seas nodded and accepted mysterious heaven and earth challenge with a smile. F***CK. Wang Yu was dumbfounded. This Five Lakes Four Seas temper is too good. Why did he accept the challenge so easily? "Tis," Wu Ji said disdainfully. "Do you think there's a good guy among these two? Just keep watching." As soon as Wu Ji finished speaking, the players from both sides were transported to the arena. Just as Wu Ji said, to be the boss of the top team in the national server, he was naturally not the kind of person who would jump at the slightest provocation. Moreover, Five Lakes Four Seas still had this kind of personality. The second match was indeed not between Mysterious Heaven and Earth and Five Lakes Four Seas. Team Raging Desolation sent out a Grandmaster of Combat called Universe Raging Desolation. Team Nine States sent out a Shield Warrior with the ID 100 Gold Standing Wood. Seeing that Five Lakes Four Seas did not go up, Mysterious Heaven and Earth pointed at Five Lakes Four Seas and scolded, "Shameless. Didn't you say you would go up?" "Hee hee." Five Lakes Four Seas laughed. "Same to you." These two were really shameless. Although the captains of both teams did not go up, the two who went up were also famous experts. There was no need to mention Universe Raging Desolation. Team Raging Desolation was named after him. Their strength could be imagined. However, it was a pity that this guy actually chose the weakest profession in Rebirth, Grandmaster of Combat. Of course, after watching so many matches, the audience no longer believed in the saying that Grandmasters of Combat were trash. After all, none of the Grandmasters of Combat who went up on stage were easy to deal with, especially a motley crew of teams. But Jean Limu was a veteran expert of the Nine States team. Although his reputation was not as arrogant as the #1 Shield Warrior of the national server, his skills were not any weaker than Lei Gongdai's. It was worth mentioning that this guy was 2 meters tall in real life and weighed close to 150 kilograms. His in-game character was several times bigger than him. He was as thick and sturdy as a wall, and just by standing there, he could make his opponents feel a heavy pressure. Universe Chaos. This agility-based Grandmaster of Combat was small and dainty to begin with. At this time, when he stood on the stage with Jean Limu, the small one became even smaller, and the big one became even bigger. It was very comical. The countdown ended, and the match began. Universe Desolate did not say a word and directly rushed towards the 100 gold tree. Jean Limu calmly placed the shield in front of his chest. In the game Rebirth, equipment would automatically adjust to the size of the wielder's body. It was the same for shields. Although the shield's attributes wouldn't increase with the size of the shield, the larger the shield was, the more attacks it could defend against. This was because shield warriors were all big guys. The 100 gold tree was even bigger than the average shield warrior. This was purely his advantage. This guy's in-game character was close to 2.5 meters tall, and his shield was 3 meters wide. The stage was not that big, and the 100 gold tree's shield almost blocked half of the way. At this time, Universe Chaos had already rushed in front of the 100 gold tree. He leaped high into the air and raised his fist to smash the 100 gold tree's head. Bastard! Seeing this, the 100 gold tree hurriedly extended his middle finger to try a taunt skill. Universe Chaos was directly pulled in front of him. However, before the 100 gold tree could attack, Universe Chaos directly activated his inner breath and broke free from the 100 gold tree's taunt. Awesome! Awesome! Seeing this scene, Wu Ji and the others were full of praise. Even Wang Yu could not help but give him a thumbs up. Everyone knew that because Grandmasters of Combat did not have weapon proficiency, their attack power was relatively low. Although they could use all kinds of weapons, all their skills were focused on their fists and legs. Therefore, compared to other professions, they were relatively weak. However, in a sense, fists and legs also had their advantages. As long as they were within range of penetration, Grandmasters of Combat were invincible. However, even so, it had to be built on the basis of penetration. It was extremely difficult to penetrate a powerful shield warrior like Baijin Limu. Furthermore, he had an impenetrable shield in his hand. Even a top-notch expert like Universe Chaos would not be able to forcefully penetrate his defense. However, Universe Chaos was smarter. This guy actually revealed an opening, allowing the 100 gold tree to pull him in front of him and use his opponent's strength to complete the penetration. This kind of operation not only required skill, but also courage. As expected of a top master, to be able to think of such a method of penetration. At that moment, Chaotic Universe was less than half a meter away from 100 Gold Standing Tree. He stretched out his hand and grabbed 100 Gold Standing Tree's hair. Then, he pulled downwards, causing 100 Gold Standing Tree to bend over. Chaotic Universe then raised his knee and sent a downward knee strike. Bang! Universe Chaos knee slammed into the 100 Gold Tree's face. -11411, a blood-red number floated above the 100 Gold Tree's head. 10,000 HP was actually not much to the 100 Gold Tree, who had thick skin and flesh. However, this knee from Universe Chaos had stunned him. Grandmasters of Combat had a combo attack style. Seeing that the 100 Gold Tree was stunned, Universe Chaos took a few steps forward, stepped on the 100 Gold Tree's knee, jumped up, and used a Rising Dragon Punch from the bottom up. The 100 Gold Tree was bent over and stunned. Naturally, he could not dodge in time. Bang! With a loud sound, Universe Chaos Punch landed on the 100 Gold Tree's chin. Universe originally thought that this punch could send the 100 Gold Tree flying, but he didn't know if it was because the 100 Gold Tree was too heavy or something else. This punch only made the 100 Gold Tree straighten its back. The 100 Gold Tree didn't float in the air. F***CK. Is this a F***King boss? The levitation skill is ineffective? Seeing this, the audience was shocked. To place one's pride was also shocked. Bullsh**T boss. Wuji heard this and said, before the 100 Gold Tree was stunned, he used the stabilize skill. No wonder. Hearing Wuji's words, to place one's pride rubbed his chin. Stabilize was a shield warrior's super armor skill. In the super armor state, unless it was a hard control like a stun, skills like knockback would not work. Universe Chaos attack was too fast. Before the 100 Gold Tree's super armor effect ended, his Rising Dragon Punch had already hit. Of course, it was effective enough to prevent the knockback. After all, he was a professional player. Not only was his PK skills amazing, but he was also full of tactics. If one was not careful, they could be tricked. Chapter 1270. Baijin Limu's dizzy state had already been dispelled by the Rising Dragon Fist. Baijin Limu fiercely stomped his feet, and Universe Desolation was sent flying. Immediately afterwards, the 100 Gold Tree raised his shield and slammed it into Chaos Universe's body. Chaos Universe was unable to dodge in time and was smashed solidly. Bang! Universe Chaos was smashed to the ground by the shield, and a mosquito coil appeared on his head. Baijin Limu raised his shield with both hands and smashed it into the ground. Boom! With a loud bang, the earth shook and the mountains shook. The shield landed directly on the waist of the universe. At the same time, a row of words appeared above Baijin Limu's head. Profound meaning, fatal dragon, severing rod. The seemingly ordinary smash turned out to be an awakened skill. A third of Chaos Universe's HP bar was smashed away, and he was stuck to the ground by the 100 Gold Tree's heavy shield. Baijin Limu stepped on Chaos Universe's head, unhurriedly pulled out a one-handed sword from his waist, and ruthlessly stabbed Chaos Universe's neck. Chaos Universe was a weak Grandmaster of Combat, and one that leaned towards agility. Naturally, he could not withstand the 100 Gold Tree's attacks for long, and was quickly beaten into a white light. The audience couldn't help but feel emotional when they saw the universe being killed so quickly. It couldn't be helped. Shield warriors walked the path of power and might. All the fragile physical classes were not even worth mentioning in front of them. Even the assassin class could be completely countered by a shield warrior, let alone the relatively weaker grandmasters of combat. In the end, Five Lakes Four Seas was more skilled. He guessed that Universe Chaos would be sent up for this match, so he sent out the 100 gold tree, which could restrain his opponent. After killing his opponent, Bai Jinlimu laughed and jumped off the stage. The performance of the members of the Nine Regions team was also very calm, as if this was a common occurrence. They were neither arrogant nor rash, and they were steady and imposing, as expected of an expert from the top team of the national server. Every movement of the members exuded the aura of a king. When Tian Di, Xian Huang saw that he lost the second round, he angrily pointed at the 5 lakes and 4 seas and shouted, "Despicable bastard, do you dare to fight me one-on-one in the third round?" Sure, 5 lakes 4 seas was still smiling indifferently. Liar is a grandson. Kenny Xian Huang raised his middle finger. 5 lakes 4 seas nodded. Sure. As he spoke, 5 lakes 4 seas clicked on the option to enter the field. Although Heaven, Earth, Xian, and Huang wanted to win, they were not willing to be subservient, so they did as they were told. With a flash of white light, the two of them were teleported to the arena. Heaven, Earth, Mystic, and Yellow Warrior. Furthermore, he was a two-handed warrior. He wielded a long sword in each hand and emitted an alluring radiance. Two-handed warriors were a common class of warriors. They needed to activate the two-handed mastery talent at level 40. In terms of attack power, two swords were much stronger than a single sword. But in terms of control, two swords were much more difficult than a single sword. After all, Rebirth was a holographic simulation game. Unlike normal keyboards and mice, players could just stand there and play mindlessly with weapons. Using weapons in Rebirth also required a lot of skill. Two swords meant two different paths, and the degree of difficulty was no less than that of fighting left and right. It was already extremely difficult for a normal warrior to control one sword well, let alone two. Even a kung fu expert like Wang Yu would not easily use two swords. Even if he did, he would use one long and one short, one for offense and one for defense. It was unknown whether Tian, Di, Xian, and Huang dared to play this branch of the martial arts because they were arrogant or they were really talented. 5 lakes 4 seas was a mage. This guy looked good, and his attitude was indifferent. He exuded a confident aura from the inside out. In addition, he wore a sky blue robe and held a light blue staff in his hand. Just by standing there, he really did have the demeanor of a king. In terms of profession, mages were more of a counter to warriors. However, looking at the setting, such a small place like the arena was definitely not suitable for long-range professions like mages. In order to win the competition, Tian, Di, Xian, and Huang had thrown away their pride. In such a small setting like the arena, they called for mages to come up and fight one-on-one. Of course, things like competitions were the same as being a person. Once you cared about face, you would lose half the battle. This was the main reason why Uncle Neo had always been depressed. As the saying goes, when enemies meet, their eyes turn especially red. Tian, Di, Xian, and Huang already bore a grudge against 5 lakes 4 seas for making them his substitute. They were also suppressed by 5 lakes 4 seas for a few years. Now that they could fight against 5 lakes 4 seas, they were very excited. The competition began. Tian, Di, Xian, and Huang clamored. Little 5, this time the champion will definitely not be you. Is that so? 5 lakes 4 seas laughed. Could be you? Nonsense. Xian, Di, and Huang lower their heads. Their two swords, one in front and one behind, rushed towards 5 lakes 4 seas. 5 lakes 4 seas naturally wasn't weak. Seeing Xian, Di, and Huang rush towards him, 5 lakes 4 seas pointed his staff to the ground and chanted, "Ice mirror technique." Instantly, cold air rose. Kaka. A layer of ice appeared under Xian, Di, and Huang's feet. Ha! Xian, Di, and Huang jumped up and laughed. You've been tricked. As he said that, Xian, Di, and Huang activated collision in midair. They instantly jumped over the ice and landed beside 5 lakes 4 seas. They slashed at 5 lakes 4 seas. Voila! 5 lakes 4 seas shattered on the ground. It was ice shadow technique. After 5 lakes 4 seas used ice mirror technique, his doppelganger immediately left. The sword slashed empty air. Xian, Di, and Huang thought that 5 lakes 4 seas would sneak an attack from behind and immediately turn around. At this moment, 5 lakes 4 seas appeared on the other side of Xian, pointed his staff to the ground, and said, "Vortex technique." Immediately after, the ground under Xian, Di, and Huang turned into a pool of water. A vortex appeared in the water, and Xian, Di, and Huang's feet went limp and directly sank into it. Xian, Di, and Huang struggled frantically. In the end, the more they struggled, the deeper they sank. In a short while, only their heads were left. Hee, you've been tricked. Looking at Xian, Di, and Huang, who only had a head left on the ground and was still desperately trying to escape, 5 lakes 4 seas chuckled. He stabbed his staff to the ground and chanted, "Ice seal. Ka ka ka." After a terrifying sound, the vortex on the ground was frozen into ice. Xian, Di, and Huang completely lost the ability to resist. Wow! The audience was in an uproar. They thought that the boss of the national server's #1 team and the boss of the national server's #2 team would fight for at least 300 rounds. They didn't expect that in less than half a minute, Xian, Di, and Huang would be frozen into a piece by 5 lakes 4 seas. The gap between the two was actually so big. People often said that the reason why 9 States was #1 was because the highest ranking was #1, and the reason why Raging Desolate was #2 was because they only had the strength of #2. Seeing this, Mingdu, who was below the stage, couldn't help but sigh. As expected of 5 lakes 4 seas, I didn't expect Ice Seal to be used like this. Ice Seal was a sealing magic. Although it could freeze the target, the frozen target was invincible and couldn't be attacked. 5 lakes 4 seas was smart. He first used the vortex technique to trap the target, and then sealed the vortex technique on the ground. This way, he could expose the target's attack point and make it easier to attack. Sure enough, smart people were smart in their own way. To play the game well, one still needed to use their brain. Chapter 1271. Heaven and Earth. Xian Huang, who was frozen by the 5 lakes and 4 seas, only revealed its head. Not only did it look funny, but it also couldn't do anything. He could only open his mouth and shout. 5 lakes 4 seas unhurriedly cast a set of magic on the head of the mysterious yellow heaven and earth. The mysterious yellow heaven and earth was directly beaten into a white light. The 9 Regions team won another round. The audience cheered and shouted the name of the 9 Regions team while holding the banners in their hands. The players and fans of Team Scourge sat gloomily in their seats, not saying a word. Their hearts were heavy. In fact, after being at odds with the 9 Provinces battle team for so long, the members of the Raging Desolate battle team boasted that they knew the ins and outs of the 9 Provinces battle team, especially the Heaven, Earth, Mystic, and Yellow Seas battle team. They had always treated the 5 Lakes and 4 Seas battle team as their imaginary enemies, so they naturally knew the strength of the 5 Lakes and 4 Seas battle team like the back of their hands. Because of this, Heaven, Earth, Black, and Yellow dared to take the initiative to provoke the 5 Lakes and 4 Seas. They didn't expect the 5 Lakes and 4 Seas' strength to far exceed the imagination of Heaven, Earth, Black, and Yellow under the new game mode. In fact, no matter how monotonous the gameplay was, there were still differences. Experts were experts because they could adapt to the game environment faster than ordinary people and find the most effective way to beat the game. Rebirth was an MMORPG that transcended the era, and its new game mode subverted the usual MMORPG playstyle. Therefore, the ability to quickly adapt to the holographic mode was the standard to determine whether a master was qualified or not. No matter how glorious their past achievements were, if they couldn't adapt to the new playstyle, they would still be eliminated. After all, Heaven, Earth, Xian, and Huang were top-notch experts. Although they weren't inferior to normal players in the new game mode, the difference in talent between them was exposed when they faced a true expert. No wonder when he was in the 9 regions team, Heaven, Earth, Mysterious, and Yellow only had the qualification to sit on the bench. It wasn't just the raging, desolate battle team's members. Even Wang Yu, who was watching from below the stage, couldn't help but raise his guard as he looked around. In Wang Yu's eyes, the strength of the 5 lakes and 4 seas was not just in terms of strength. His calm attitude towards his opponents and his incomparably strong self-confidence was something that even a martial artist with a strong heart could not compare to. Confidence usually came from strength, as expected of the strongest expert in the gaming circle. Just this attitude alone was enough to make people feel awe. Wang Yu had seen many gaming experts, but there were definitely no more than 5 that could make Wang Yu feel pressured, and 5 Lakes 4 Seas was one of them. As a strong team that had been ranked number 1 in the national server for many years, 9 states had a wealth of experience in dealing with defeated opponents like Team Scourge Desolate. Apart from the first match where Sword Moniker Obelisk won against 3 Mountains 5 Peaks by relying on its own advantage, the other 4 matches were all defeated by the players of 9 provinces who relied on their rich experience. The first match ended with Team 9 States winning 4-1 against Team Raging Desolate. Being beaten up so miserably by Team 9 regions, Heaven, Earth, Black, and Yellow were somewhat hysterical. On the other hand, the players of Team 9 regions were indifferent, as if what they did was a very ordinary thing. This was the difference between realms. The break was over, and the second match began. The second match of the Pro League had always been a game of luck. This was especially true for teams with extraordinary experts. It was very likely that they would be able to make a comeback in the second round, but it was also possible that they would completely fail. In short, it was like what Wuji had said, leave it to fate. For the second match, it was time for Team 9 provinces to choose their location. 5 Lakes 4 Seas copied Heaven, Earth, Black, and Yellow, and casually chose to give up. Whoa! Seeing this, the audience became excited again. In the first match, Team Raging Desolate gave up on choosing their map and looked down on their opponents. But in the second match, Team 9 provinces immediately returned the favor. In the end, they were the number 1 team in the national server. They fought back and forth, and their momentum was not at a disadvantage at all. Of course, the difference between the second match and the first match was not big. They were both solo matches, and the second match was extremely unpredictable. 5 Lakes 4 Seas starting point was no different from Heaven, Earth, Black, and Yellow. The only additional meaning was to tell Heaven, Earth, Black, and Yellow, little guy, it's impolite not to reciprocate. Do you think I can't see through your little thoughts? Sure enough, seeing that 5 Lakes 4 Seas had given up on choosing, Heaven, Earth, Black, and Yellow immediately knew that they had been tricked again, and their faces immediately turned ashen. However, despite their anger, Heaven, Earth, Black, and Yellow still chose the map for the second match. No one knew which player they would be sending up, so the map for the second match was still not big. It was a commonly used gladiator arena. After the system made its choice, 2 white lights landed on both teams. The first player from Team Raging Desolation was unexpectedly Swordjuk, while the player from Team 9 States was also a warrior called 8 Desolation 6 Directions. 8 Desolation 6 Directions was a new player from Team 9 States. From the name, this kid style was more similar to Team Raging Desolation. When they saw this ID, many people were stunned for a moment, thinking that Team Raging Desolation had chosen 2 players. With a white light, 2 new players, seeing the word new, my mind suddenly popped up with a bow to Heaven and Earth. Were sent to the arena. There was no need to mention the strength of Swordjuk. Not to mention among ordinary players, even among martial artists like Wang Yu, he was a top-notch existence. 8 Desolation 6 Directions was just a new player. Facing an expert who had even defeated 3 Mountains 5 Peaks, he inevitably felt a little nervous. As soon as the countdown ended, 8 Desolation 6 Directions lowered his head and charged forward. Although the warrior's charge skill was a very good starting skill, the direction of this skill was not difficult to judge. Moreover, the swing time of this skill was relatively long. As long as an expert had a little bit of experience, they would be able to easily dodge it. Using this skill in front of Sword Juk was definitely not a wise move. With a glance, Sword Juk determined the destination of the opponent's charge. He calmly jumped back, easily jumping away from the trajectory of the charge. 8 Desolation, 6 Directions directly hit the air. However, at this moment, 8 Desolation, 6 Directions charge skill had not yet ended. He suddenly rolled to the ground and rolled to the feet of Sword Juk. Then he grabbed the hilt of the sword with both hands and slashed upwards, using Rising Dragon Slash. It seemed that 8 Desolation, 6 Directions, as a member of Team 9 States, wasn't just a nobody. The charge at the beginning was just a trick to lure the enemy. The Rising Dragon Slash was the real killing move. 8 Desolation, 6 Directions suddenly rolled to the feet of Sword Juk, catching him off guard. In a moment of carelessness, Sword Juk was hit by 8 Desolation, 6 Directions, Rising Dragon Slash. After being hit, Sword Juk immediately floated in the air. He swung 8 Desolation, 6 Directions great sword behind him, using the warrior's most useful skill, Whirlwind Slash. Sword Juk's feet instantly lit up with sword light. Chapter 1272. The higher the level of the skill, the higher the priority and damage. Whirlwind Slash was a common level 20 warrior skill, while Collapsing Mountain was a level 50 skill. Naturally, it was obvious who had the higher and lower judgment effect. Boom! With a loud noise, sword name Obelisk landed on the ground, and Desolation 6 Directions was sent flying. The knockback effect of Collapsing Mountain was much stronger than being knocked into the air. Players could still quick recover while they were knocked into the air, but they could only wait for the crowd control to end. Sword name Obelisk pulled out his sword and twisted his body, using a high-level skill, Army Breaker Rising Dragon Slash. Sword name Obelisk style was similar to Divine Sword Sex style. Losing momentum, stirring up momentum, not giving up momentum. Even when at a disadvantage, sword name Obelisk was able to forcefully turn the tables. Now that the situation was reversed, sword name Obelisk naturally wouldn't let Desolation 6 Directions go so easily. Sword name Obelisk struck again and again, and Desolation 6 Directions was unable to resist. After a series of strikes, Desolation 6 Directions turned into a white light and was knocked out of the arena. The second member of 9 States' team was called 9 Heaven God Arrow. From a name, it wasn't hard to tell that he was an archer. The arena wasn't too big, and archers didn't have much of an advantage in this map. In fact, they might even be at a disadvantage. However, 9 Heaven God Arrow was different. This guy was standing on a strange skateboard and holding a strange crossbow in his hand. There were 9 holes on the crossbow, and each hole had an arrowhead. The sharp arrowhead shone with a blue light. Seeing this, Chun Xiang couldn't help but exclaim, "This archer isn't easy to deal with. It can't be." To place one's pride frowned. In this map, archers clearly have no advantage over warriors. What do you know? Chun Xiang pointed at the arrows on 9 Heaven God Arrow's crossbow. This kid's arrows are obviously coated with poison. Coated with poison? To place one's pride heard this and felt a chill on his neck. Damn, the crossbow in this kid's hand was clearly a weapon that could deal area of effect attacks. Shooting 9 arrows at once. Who could guarantee that one of them wouldn't hit me? There were actually players from all over the world who were so sinister. Thinking of this, to place one's pride quickly turned his head and looked at the members of the 9 Provinces battle team. The attitude of this group of people was still indifferent. Looking at the 9th Heaven God Arrow on the stage, they did not feel worried at all because of the strength of the opponent. It seemed that this group of people was quite confident in the 9th Heaven God Arrow. Seeing the strange attire of the 9 Heavens God Arrow, Zhu Kai couldn't help but be surprised. After so many matches, this was the first time that this strange guy appeared. Zhu Kai immediately became vigilant. The match began. Without saying a word, the sword named Great Ravager charged forward. After all, when fighting against an archer, melee classes had to close the distance between them as soon as possible. Otherwise, as long as the opponent was out of their attack range, there was a chance that they could kite themselves. However, in the face of the approaching sword, the Nine Regions god Arrow didn't intend to dodge. When the great Ravager arrived in front of him, the Nine Provinces god Arrow stretched out his left hand, and a huge wooden shield appeared in front of the Nine Provinces god Arrow. F***CK. Seeing the archer take out his shield, the audience was dumbfounded. Is he an archer or a shield warrior? Don't the class restrictions exist? Even the archer has a F***king shield. Of course, the Nine Heavens god Arrow was just an archer. Even if he took out a shield, the sword named Great Ravager didn't think that he could block the Nine Provinces god Arrow's charge. After all, the class restrictions were there. How could the fragile body of an archer compare to that of a warrior? Hence, the sword named Great Ravager crashed into the shield of the Nine Provinces god Arrow without thinking. Boom! A muffled sound rang out. Just as the sword named Great Ravager expected, the Nine Heavens god Arrow couldn't withstand the impact and was directly knocked several meters away. However, the sword named Great Ravager quickly reacted. Damn, shouldn't I be knocked away by a warrior? How did this kid get knocked back? Just as the sword named Great Ravager was feeling puzzled, the Nine Heavens god Arrow patted the shield. A row of small holes appeared in the middle of the shield, and at the same time, a rectangular gap appeared above the holes. Then, the Nine Heavens god Arrow pressed the strange crossbow in his hand on the shield. Gotcha! The crossbow was embedded in the shield, and the 9 holes on the crossbow fit perfectly with the small holes on the shield. The Nine Heavens god Arrow cat, who was behind the shield, aimed at the sword named Great Ravager through the gap and pulled the trigger. A row of arrows flew out, glowing with a blue light, flying toward the sword named Great Ravager. What the hell is this? Seeing the strange movement of the Nine Heavens god Arrow, everyone was confused. They had played the game for a long time, but they had never seen such a strange archer. 5 lakes 4 seas, and the others smiled slightly. This was the difference between the Nine Heavens god Arrow. The Nine Heavens god Arrow's class was one of the most powerful hidden subclasses of the archer class, the mechanical engineer. The mechanical engineer could manufacture and assemble all kinds of war equipment. They could also use parts to assemble all kinds of weapons. When trained to the extreme, they could even make themselves into Iron Man. Although this shield was the lowest level of war equipment, it was the most suitable to deal with the sword named Great Ravager in this situation. Seeing the arrow flying toward him, the sword named Great Ravager was shocked. He hurriedly rolled forward, dodged the arrow, rushed to the front of the Nine Heavens god Arrow, and raised his sword. Bang! The sword named Great Ravager's sword struck the Nine Heavens god Arrow's shield, and the Nine Heavens god Arrow was once again pushed back several meters. Then he raised the crossbow, aimed at the sword named Great Ravager diagonally below, and another row of arrows flew toward it. The sword named Great Ravager hurriedly jumped back, and only then did he dodge the arrow attack. At the same time, Wang Yu and the others also studied the Nine Heavens god Arrow. The skateboard under this kid's feet and the shield in his hand were set. How powerful could an archer be with a shield? But with the skateboard, once he was attacked by the opponent, he would retreat and thus offset the powerful impact of the opponent. In this way, the Nine Heavens god Arrow didn't even need to move and could rely on the opponent's attack to kite the opponent. To place one's pride set in shock, can't fight, can't dodge, so isn't this guy invincible? He's not invincible. Wang Yu waved his hand. It's not hard to deal with him. Just circle around and slash him from behind. So that's how it is. To place one's pride had just learned how to use the sword skill, and he began to look down on others. Is that warrior stupid? Can't he think of this? It's useless even if he thinks of it, Wuji interrupted. Why do you think he's so fearless? Isn't it because his opponent is a warrior? Indeed, the principle of circling around the opponent's back was very simple, but for a clumsy class like the warrior to escape from this predicament, it was not easy. After all, in terms of movement speed and jumping height, warriors and archers simply couldn't compare and naturally couldn't circle around the opponent's back to attack. Sigh, to place one's pride side, if only he was an assassin. Chapter 1273. While they were talking, Great Ravager and Nine Heavens God Arrow had already fought a few rounds. It had to be said that Nine Heavens God Arrow was really shameless. If he was hit at close range, he would run away. If he was far away, he could still kite. As a warrior, no matter how fast Great Ravager's movement speed was, it could not compare to an archer's turning speed. Nine Heavens God Arrow fired a volley of arrows, forcing Great Ravager to retreat. Soon, Nine Heavens God Arrow forced Great Ravager to the edge of the arena. Great Ravager had no way out. The Ninth Heaven God Arrow smiled proudly, and once again pulled the trigger of the crossbow toward the sword. Whoosh! A row of poisoned arrows flew towards Great Ravager. Great Ravager gritted its teeth and rolled forward to dodge the arrows. It then used charge to collide with Nine Heavens God Arrow. Nine Heavens God Arrow was confident that the skateboard under its feet could offset charge, so when it saw Great Ravager rushing towards it, it did not dodge. However, when the sword Juke was half a meter away from the Nine Heavens God Arrow, it suddenly stopped. Its right hand that was holding the sword suddenly raised and thrust forward, accurately piercing the sword into the Nine Heavens God Arrow's lookout hole. Seeing this scene, Five Lakes Four Seas' calm face suddenly showed a trace of surprise. Nine Heavens God Arrow's lookout hole was not big. Even if it stood there and let others stab it, the difficulty was no less than putting a long sword back into its scabbard. However, in this situation, Great Ravager moved at high speed, stopped, raised its sword, and stabbed into the lookout hole. There was no pause in the middle. This degree of accuracy could be described as abnormal. Bang! Nine Heavens God Arrow was caught off guard and was stabbed in the forehead. At the same time, Nine Heavens God Arrow also pulled the trigger. Nine Heavens God Arrow was an archer and did not have much health. Great Ravager's sword hit its vitals and killed Nine Heavens God Arrow on the spot. On the other hand, Great Ravager had already fought a battle before. In the second battle, Nine Heavens God Arrow had lost quite a bit of HP. At this time, Great Ravager was very close to the crossbow's firing hole, so all 9 poison crossbow bolts hit Great Ravager. As soon as Nine Heavens God Arrow died, Great Ravager followed suit. Looking at the two who perished together on the stage, the audience could not help but sigh. They did not expect that there would be such a shameless class like the Nine Heavens Godly Archer in Rebirth. The pro players also listed the Nine Heavens Divine Arrow as their main target, especially the warrior players. After all, no one could guarantee that they could accurately stab their weapon through the watchtower like Great Ravager. Although the following matches were still exciting, they paled in comparison to the stunning performance of the Ninth Heaven God Arrow. The Nine States team had a wealth of experience in dealing with the Raging Desolate era team. Unsurprisingly, the Nine States team won the second and third matches. The Raging Desolate team was even more miserable than the previous years. Not only did they lose their second-place title, they didn't even make it into the top 4. The most pitiful one was none other than Swordjuk. This brat boasted that he was an expert swordsman in this region, and was even thinking of winning the championship to bring glory to his ancestors. Who would have thought that Dreambreaker would enter the top 8? As the saying goes, those who have seen the ocean cannot be water, and those who have not seen Mount Wu are not clouds. After watching the match between the number 1 and number 2 teams, the following matches were no longer able to excite the audience. It couldn't be helped. The top experts of the circle were all in 9 states. Even a strong team like the Raging Desolate era could only be substitutes in front of 9 states. One could only imagine the standard of the other teams. It wasn't that they were too weak, but that they couldn't stand up to the competition. There were even many in the audience who expressed their opinion that the championship should be given to 9 states. After all, the other teams were no longer on the same level as 9 states. Of course, one couldn't look at the popularity of the competition. Otherwise, wouldn't it be like a talent show? If that were the case, the motley crew of Chuanjin wouldn't even be able to make it into the preliminaries. The final champion would surely be Skyfire. When they exited the arena, it began to rain once more. This city was much more rainy than the dry north. The mood of the Chuanjin team was just like the weather gloomy. What's wrong, everyone? Wang Yu couldn't help but find it strange that the happy-go-lucky team of Chuanjin, who had always been good at finding joy in the midst of hardship, were frowning. Back when they'd been besieged by an army of 1,000,000, they'd been all smiles. Why were they like this now? Could it be that they, too, were feeling melancholy? Wuji's voice was placid. What can it be? It's a lot of pressure. Pressure? You guys have something like that? Wang Yu was curious. Nonsense. We're people too. Why can't we feel pressure? Everyone was displeased with Wang Yu's dismissive tone. Tomorrow was the last day of the competition. Although the Chuanjin team didn't like the reputation of being the best in the world, deep in their bones, they were the type who loved to fight. If their opponents were the same as they'd been in the past, they'd do their best to deal with them. But after seeing Nine States' performance, they didn't have that mindset anymore. Even Wuji, who'd always treated Nine States as a loser, didn't bring it up again. This team was clearly not on the same level as the other teams. If they ran into them, they'd lose miserably. No one in Chuanjin couldn't afford to lose, but that depended on how they lost. Even if they were this group of thick-skinned guys, they weren't willing to be beaten like dogs on the stage in front of hundreds of millions of players from all over the country. There were 4 teams in the competition tomorrow. Chuanjin had a 1 in 3 chance of meeting Nine States. How could they not feel depressed? Oh, so that's how it is. Wang Yu said, "You're all just a bunch of flies and dogs. Your psychological quality is too bad." F***CK. Everyone was furious. When you say that, can't you consider our feelings? Meow. The strong opponents in everyone's eyes had become trash that wasn't even worth mentioning in front of this kid. If it were someone else, everyone would have scolded him for bragging. But when it came to Wang Yu, they didn't even have anything to vent. All right, Wang Yu corrected himself. I'm here. What are you afraid of? Everyone said gloomily. It's not as good as the previous sentence. All right. Wuji waved his hand and said, we just don't want to meet Nine States. That's not easy. Oh, hearing what Wuji said, everyone was surprised. What's wrong? Did you bribe the game staff? F***CK. Wuji said gloomily. Can't you think of me in a good way? Then, what other way do you have to prevent us from meeting Nine States? Everyone said happily. Chapter 1274. Right to challenge? I actually forgot about that. He was, after all, the leader of Chuanjin. He was much better at comforting people than Wang Yu. Hearing what Wuji said, everyone's originally depressed mood immediately improved. Looking at the joyful crowd, Wang Yu rubbed his chin and said, the right to challenge can only be chosen in the first round, right? Are you guys willing to lose to the Sky Dragon Battle team? Oh, everyone was stunned when they heard that, seeing that his teammates, who had just been comforted, were beaten back to their original state by Wang Yu's words. Wuji stared at Wang Yu with a dark face and said, I don't know why, but I suddenly want to beat this brat up. Does anyone want to do it together? Everyone looked at each other and lowered their heads, choosing to remain silent. What a joke. It was embarrassing to be abused by others in the game, but challenging Wang Yu in real life was equivalent to losing one's life. Although Wang Yu had exposed Wuji's intentions, after such a commotion, the depression in everyone's hearts was dispelled quite a bit. At most, they would just lose a match. It wouldn't hurt them, nor would it waste money. At most, they would just lose face. As for things like face, it was useless to Chuanjin. Knock, knock, knock. Just as the Chuanjin people were joking with each other, there was suddenly a knock on the door. Mu Zixian, who was closest to the door, opened the door and saw Dugu Jiuqiang sneakily poking his head out. Hello, Sister Niu. Seeing Mu Zixian, Dugu Jiuqiang first nodded respectfully, then smiled and walked in front of the Chuanjin people. Wuji and the others squinted their eyes and said, Oh, isn't this following your heart? What are you doing here instead of staying in your room? Hee. Seeing the Chuanjin people address him like that, Dugu Jiuqiang was not anxious. Instead, he smiled and said, My good brothers, it's been so long since I came to visit. Please forgive me. Cut the crap, Wuji said. If you have anything to say, just say it. I've never seen anyone visit empty-handed. Huh? Dugu Jiuqiang's expression froze. He hurriedly took out 2 bags of sugar cubes from his pocket and placed them on the table. Everyone in the town was speechless. F*CK. He brought 2 bags of sugar cubes when he came to visit, and they were the kind that the hotel gave away for making coffee. F*CK. Did he put them in his pocket and plan to bring them home? Yeah, you guys don't like it? Seeing everyone's expression, Dugu Jiuqiang shuddered and hurriedly tried to take it back. Wuji picked up "Don't Beg for Help" from the sofa and knocked on Dugu Jiuqiang's paw, scolding, "You're so shameless. Do you want to take it back? What's the matter? Tell me quickly." "That," Dugu Jiuqiang said embarrassedly, "the finals are tomorrow. It's very likely that we'll meet 9 provinces in the first round. I know that Wuji has a good brain. Do you have any strategies to share with us? Our Sky Dragon City is Yu Huiqing's subsidiary city. We should face difficulties together." Well, it turned out that the pressure was so great that they didn't know Chuanjin's group. Sky Dragon Battle Team had an expert like War God leading them, so they didn't feel at ease. They came to Chuanjin to ask for a solution. Dugu Jiuqiang was really desperate. Coming to Chuanjin to ask for a solution. Wasn't he just looking for a pit? Strategy? Wuji smiled and said, "Isn't it just 9 provinces battle team? With us here, you definitely won't meet them." "What is it?" Dugu Jiuqiang heard that and stretched his neck to ask. Listening to Wuji's tone, it seemed like he had the confidence to eliminate 9 provinces battle team in the first round. Wuji smiled and said, "I heard that Sky Dragon City has a teleportation formation to Dragon Island. You'll be in charge of the teleportation fees?" "That," Dugu Jiuqiang said, "from now on, as long as it's our brothers from Chuanjin, we won't charge a single cent." "That's what you said." Wuji nodded in satisfaction and said, "Go back. You'll know tomorrow. Are you reliable?" Dugu Jiuqiang frowned and said, "You won't lie to me, right? Don't fool around." Wuji said, "We've known each other for so long. Have you ever seen me lie?" This, Dugu Jiuqiang pondered for a while. That's true. Wuji always liked to use words to lead people to make the wrong choice. He really didn't lie to people before. Thinking of this, Dugu Jiuqiang pointed at Wuji and said, "You said it. If we encounter 9 provinces battle team, what I said just now won't be effective." Wuji grinned and said, "All right, get lost. If I lie to you, I'll return your candy as well." Seeing the treacherous smile on Wuji's face, Dugu Jiuqiang suddenly felt uneasy, but he still got up and left Chuanjin's room. TSK. After Dugu Jiuqiang left, everyone from Chuanjin sighed and said, "We're going to challenge Sky Dragon Battle Team tomorrow, right?" "That's right." Wuji nodded. "Then they really won't have the chance to meet 9 provinces battle team." "Who said otherwise?" Wuji smiled. Just as Dugu Jiuqiang left, there was another knock on the door. This time, it was from 5 Lakes and 4 Seas, and this kid was carrying a fruit basket in his hand. 5 Lakes and 4 Seas was used to visiting the major battle teams before the finals. First, it was to observe the opponent's mentality, and second, it was to create pressure on the opponent. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. But seeing the smiling faces of Chuanjin's group, 5 Lakes and 4 Seas was startled. 5 Lakes and 4 Seas had just returned from Xiao Yao Battle Team and Sky Dragon Battle Team. The other 2 battle teams were all frowning and under a lot of pressure because of tomorrow's match, but the guys from Chuanjin were talking and laughing, as if they didn't care about the match at all. Thinking of Wang Yu and the other experts with extraordinary strength, 5 Lakes and 4 Seas couldn't help but feel a bit of pressure. Of course, 5 Lakes and 4 Seas was a person who didn't show his emotions, so he smiled and cupped his fist at Wuji, saying, "Brother Wuji, we haven't seen each other for a long time, right? I didn't expect the experts from Chuanjin to have the leisure to participate in this kind of competition. If not for the fact that he was the captain of the #1 battle team in a national server, with just a few words, he had made the group of bandits from Chuanjin look like reclusive experts who didn't mix with the common people. The people from Chuanjin were flattered to the point that they felt as if they were walking on air. Even if they wanted to flatter someone, they had to look at who they were flattering. This was the captain of a #1 battle team in the national server. His words were authoritative. Yeah, Wuji smiled faintly and said, "We haven't seen each other for a few years, little five. You're getting stronger and stronger. You've won several championships in a row." Haha. Five Lakes and Four Seas laughed and said, "It's just an empty reputation. Boss Wuji is the one." Five Lakes and Wuji were old acquaintances, and they talked about things that happened in the past. Seeing them sitting there and flattering each other and chatting awkwardly, the new players like Wang, you couldn't help but have goosebumps. Chapter 1275. When Wuji and the others first got to know each other, this kid was just a trusted follower. Who would have thought that after 3 Fiend Village was destroyed, most of the experts were taken over by this kid? In just a few years, he had made such a name for himself. Fate really made a fool out of people. The finals had always been the most exciting competition. On the day of the finals, the venue was immediately filled to the brim. There were even people standing to watch the competition. It was as crowded as Guadi Gang said in the crosstalk. As usual, the host would introduce the teams as soon as they appeared on stage. The remaining 4 teams were Carefree Team, Motley Team, Nine States Team, and Sky Dragon Team. Sky Dragon Team and Carefree Team were veteran teams. This was the first time in history that they had entered the top 4. Nine States Team was the benchmark of the industry. Other than newbies like Wang Yu, no one would not know them. Only Motley Team had fought their way from the amateur competition until now. The audience could not help but feel that the experts were hidden among the people. This group of grassroots people had actually fought their way into the top 4. Even when Motley Team went on stage, the stadium was filled with cheers. Society, I, Nyogo, am a man of few words. Wuji Wuji, nothing is taboo. The fans were cheering on stage. This was something that Wang Yu and the others did not expect. Hearing the audience's cheers, Wang Yu quickly pointed at the words "martial arts supremacy" on his shirt as if he was showing off a treasure. Seeing this, the fans immediately shut up and went back to their seats with red faces. It cannot be helped. No one could afford to lose face like this. Wang Yu was still puzzled. Why is everyone so quiet? Soon, under the fans' cheers, the 4 teams entered the stadium and sat down. Dugu Juqiang Sky Dragon Team sat next to Wang Yu and the others. Dugu Juqiang winked at Wuji and greeted. "We had a deal. Don't lie to me." Wuji waved his hand impatiently. I know. Look at your bullsh asterisk T." Seeing this, Ning Jingzan asked in confusion, "Captain Yi, what are you two talking about?" Hee. Dugu Juqiang smiled and said, "Yesterday I talked to the people from Chuanjin. Today, they will think of a way to prevent us from meeting the Nine States Team in the first round. Those guys from the Carefree Team are nothing to be afraid of. Our second place is already in the bag. You don't want us to meet the 9 Provinces team in the first round?" Ningjing Ziyuan was stunned. Then she exclaimed, "You might have been tricked." "Cheated?" Dugu Juqiang said proudly. "They wouldn't dare, but I have conditions." However, before Ningjing Ziyuan could explain, the MC shouted, "The competition begins now." Immediately after, Wang Yu hit the button and shouted, "Our team wants to challenge the Sky Dragon Team." Pooh! Hearing Wang Yu's words, Dugu Juqiang spat out a mouthful of blood. His hand trembled as he pointed at Wuji, not knowing what to say. Wuji smiled at Dugu Juqiang and spread his hands. "We agreed that you won't meet the Nine States Team. Not only in the first round, you won't meet them in the second round either." Dugu Juqiang held back the words, "I'll CKU" in his mouth. In the end, he did not dare to curse out loud. Although Dugu Juqiang was extremely unwilling to fight with the guys from Chuanjin, since he was challenged, he had to accept it. Even if there was a terrifying opponent like Wang Yu, his chances of winning were still higher than the Nine States Team. After all, there were only 2 scary people from Chuanjin, but everyone from the Nine States Team was scary. After accepting the challenge, both sides entered the arena. The first match began. The motley crew chose the arena. As expected, Wang Yu chose the arena. Next, it was time to choose the player to go on stage. Ningjing Ziyuan volunteered. "I'll go for the first match." Ningjing Ziyuan was the #1 expert of the Sky Dragon Team. If he could get off to a good start, It would raise the morale of the players behind him. No way. Dugu Jiuqiang quickly waved his hand. I'm the weakest. I'll go for the first match. Ever since the motley crew competed against the professional teams, Wang Yu would always be the one to start the first match. This time would most likely be no exception. Dugu Jiuqiang knew better than anyone how strong Wang Yu was. Therefore, the first match would definitely be a loss. Since they were going to lose anyway, why would they let Ning Jing Ziyuan go? It would be better to let him go for Wang Yu. On Xuanzhen's side, just as Wang Yu was about to go on stage, Wu Ji quickly pulled Wang Yu and said, "You don't have to go for the first match." Why? Wang Yu didn't understand. Didn't I always go first in the past? Wu Ji said sinisterly, "Do you know about Tianji's horse race? Gun dogs definitely won't let an expert go for the first match. Wouldn't it be a waste for you to go first? Dao Xue, you go for this match." Me? Dao Xue was surprised. "Are you sure? Go." Wu Ji smiled. "It doesn't matter if you win or lose, as long as you're happy." As soon as Wu Ji finished speaking, the arena lit up with 2 white lights. Dao Xue and Dugu Jiuqiang were both sent to the arena. When Dugu Jiuqiang saw that his opponent was Dao Xue, he was stunned on the spot. He stared at Dao Xue and asked, "Why are you here? What's wrong?" Dao Xue said, "Are you scared?" "I'm scared, my ass." Dugu Jiuqiang smashed the spear in his hand on the ground and cursed. Dao Xue immediately pointed at Dugu Jiuqiang and said, "Referee, he's cursing." The referee slapped a yellow card on Dugan Nine Spear's face and made him obediently shut his mouth. There was nothing he could do about it. These guys from the Xuanzhen sect were still as despicable as ever. It would be a huge loss of face if he were to be sent off before the match even started. The countdown ended, and the match began. Mingji and Dao Xue hurriedly activated stealth. Dao Xue was just a normal expert. In a professional match, he was the master that everyone could bully. Fortunately, Dao Xue knew his own limits. He knew how to rely on his professional advantage and act as shamelessly as possible. Toward such a shameless person, no one could do anything. His profession was to be sneaky. He didn't use cheats, nor did he break any rules. They couldn't just stop him from using stealth, right? Although Dugu Jiuqiang was the captain of Team Sky Dragon, he wasn't a combat member. In terms of strength, this guy was only average in Xuanzhen apart from Wang Yu and a few others. He wasn't much stronger than Dao Xue. However, Dugu Jiuqiang was a punishment knight. He had high attack and high defense, which made him a good counter to assassins. Seeing that Dao Xue had gone invisible, Dugu Jiuqiang didn't panic. He took out a rune from his waist and threw it on the ground, shouting, "Knight's glory!" Pooh! The rune landed on the ground and turned into a milky white fog that covered the entire stage. After a few seconds, the fog dissipated and the stage was covered in white powder. Not far from Dugu Jiuqiang, a human silhouette covered in white powder was retreating. If it wasn't Dao Xue, who else could it be? Chapter 1276. After fighting with Xuanzhen for so many years, Dugu Jiuqiang had become a wily old fox. Knight's Glory was originally an instant blinding skill similar to a smoke bomb. Who would have thought that Dugu Jiuqiang would use it as an anti-stealth skill? Under the effect of the holy light powder, Mingji and Dao Xue had nowhere to hide. Dugu Jiuqiang raised his spear and charged over. Everyone knew that Mingji and Dao Xue's control was average. Half of his strength came from his equipment and the other half from his stealth. Without stealth, his strength dropped. Facing Dugu Jiuqiang, who was charging over, he could only use his dagger to fight. Mingji and Dao Xue was just a sneaky assassin. Standing was obviously not his strong point. Bang! A dull sound. Mingji and Dao Xue was sent flying by Dugu Jiuqiang. Flick! Dugu Jiuqiang took half a step back and raised a spear with both hands. Mingji and Dao Xue's body was leaped upwards. Spear of Divine Mark. Immediately after, Dugu Jiuqiang gathered his strength and stabbed Mingji and Dao Xue 5 times, stabbing his limbs and heart. -1244 -2000 214 minus 3,445 minus 4,778 minus 100 minus 21,165. A series of damage numbers floated above Mingjian Daoshue's head. The health bar above his head instantly turned red, as expected of the person with the most luxurious equipment in Xuanzhen. He was still alive after taking a full set of skills from Dugu Juqiang. Fallen Saint Strike. Seeing that Mingjian Daoshue was still alive, 9 solitary spears was first taken aback. Then he extended his hand to grab Mingjian Daoshue's ankle, who was still in midair, and pulled and flung him down. Bang! Mingjian Daoshue's head hit the ground. The last bit of his health was gone. He turned into a white light and fell off the stage. The audience was bored to death watching this match. Although not all of them were experts, after watching so many matches, they still had a high level of appreciation. The attacks of the two people on the stage were full of flaws. For example, the knight used charge as soon as he started, and the assassin didn't know where to move when the knight got close to him. This kind of standard really shouldn't appear in this kind of competition. However, he was an amateur and a non-combatant. No one had high hopes for him. Although Dugu Jiuqiang had won the competition, he was not in a good mood. He had intended to use his brick to lure Wang Yu's jade, but Xuanzhen had simply thrown a pile of mud at him. To Dugu Jiuqiang, Wang Yu's existence wasn't just a simple target. He was also a nuclear deterrent. As long as Wang Yu didn't fight, Dugu Jiuqiang wouldn't feel at ease. They wouldn't dare to easily put Ningjing Ziyuan on the stage. Therefore, in the second round, Dugu Jiuqiang pondered for a long time and finally sent out the Thunder God. Although the God of Thunder wasn't as strong as Tranquil Ziyuan, he was still a top-notch expert. Even if they lost to Wang Yu, Dugu Jiuqiang wouldn't feel too bad. On the other hand, Motley Mob sent out Yang Na. The Thunder God was known as the best shield warrior in the server. Yang Na's performance in the Motley Bunch Battle Team's matches was remarkable. As a female player, and a rather good-looking one at that, Yang Na left a deep impression on the audience. As soon as the two went on stage, the audience's expressions immediately turned serious. Wu Ji rubbed his chin and asked Wang Yu, "Do you think Snow can beat the Thunder God?" After being teammates with Yang Na for so long, Wu Ji naturally understood Yang Na's strength. As a martial artist, Yang Na was ranked second in Xuanzhen. She wasn't inferior to anyone other than Wang Yu. However, the Thunder God wasn't weak either. Shield warriors were very good at suppressing archers. Wu Ji wasn't sure about this match. More or less. Wang Yu thought for a moment and said, "It depends on her performance." As they spoke, the countdown of the match ended. The Thunder God and Yang Na had run dungeons together and watched many matches. He knew that the girl was very skilled. As soon as the match started, the Thunder God was on full alert. Yang Na looked at the Thunder God on the opposite side and raised her hand to shoot an arrow. Seeing this, the Thunder God raised his shield. At the same time, Yang Na quickly rushed toward the Thunder God. Yang Na was a standard agility archer. Her movement speed was extremely fast. She could reach the end of the ring in a few steps. The distance between the two was naturally closed in an instant. Clang! The arrow was blocked and fell to the ground. When the Thunder God came back to his senses, Yang Na had already rushed in front of him. She raised her crossbow and aimed at the Thunder God's eyes. The Thunder God was shocked. He hurriedly put his shield in front of him and stretched out his middle finger to use taunt on Yang Na. Bastard! Yang Na was pulled to the Thunder God's side expressionlessly. Then, the Thunder God's shield fell down and smashed towards Yang Na. Not waiting for the shield to hit her, Yang Na suddenly took a step forward and used an evasive skill. Archers were invincible when evading. Moreover, they could ignore the terrain and pass through walls. If they could even pass through walls, then there was no need to mention the Thunder God. The Thunder God's shield fell down. Yang Na passed through the Thunder God and arrived behind him. The shield hit nothing but air. The Thunder God's body leaned forward. Yang Na stretched out her left hand to steady him. At the same time, she raised the crossbow in her right hand and shot at the back of the Thunder God's head. Archers could learn the armor break skill at level 30. Ordinary armor could not block an archer's attack. The main reason why shield warriors could restrain archers was because the shield in the hands of shield warriors could not be pierced. If it was an attack from behind, puff, Yang Na's arrow pierced the back of the Thunder God's head. A damage value floated above his head. The Thunder God didn't say anything and immediately turned around. Yang Na calmly took a step forward and stuck close to Lei Gongshou's back. Her right foot followed Lei Gongshou's right foot, and her left foot followed Lei Gongshou's left foot. When Lei Gongshou turned around, Yang Na also turned to the other side. Wang Yu saw this and laughed. Follow me like a shadow. This little girl is quite smart. Seeing that Yang Na's figure was not behind him, a row of question marks appeared above the Thunder God's head. Yang Na took a step back and pointed her crossbow at the back of the Thunder God's head. She's still behind me. The Thunder God was shocked. He lifted his foot and was about to use Seismic Wave. Yang Na lightly jumped back and jumped out of the attack range. Boom! The ground around the Thunder God was shaken and flew up. The Thunder God took the opportunity to turn around. However, just as Lei Gongdian turned around, 2 more crossbow bolts flew at him, aiming for his eyes. At the critical moment, Lei Gongpai raised his shield to block the 2 crossbow bolts. Yang Na leaped forward and rolled behind Lei Gongpai. The crossbow was raised and the trigger was pulled. Puff! Another arrow hit the back of the Thunder God's head. P.S. The reason why the new book is unfinished is because the writing is not smooth. No matter how you look at it, it doesn't look like I wrote it. The second reason is because of diabetes caused by fatty liver. I can't sit for long periods of time. My typing speed is quite slow. For 1,000 words takes 4 hours to write. If I sit in front of the computer for 8 hours, my condition will easily worsen. Chapter 1277. Roar! Lei Gong blocked the arrow and roared, trying to scare Yang Na. On the other hand, Yang Na raised her hand and shot a shock arrow at Lei Gong's head. One was stunned and the other was frightened. They stopped attacking at the same time. After a few seconds, the control was lifted. Yang Na once again stuck to Lei Gong's back. Just as Wang Yu said, she followed him like a shadow. The audience stretched their necks and were dumbfounded. Damn, standing close to a shield warrior. Can an archer play like this? Were we playing fake archers in the past? This was Yang Na's brilliance. A shield warrior could restrain an agility class. This girl knew that she couldn't compete with Lei Gong's skills, so she fought with him. It was said that archers were weak in close combat, but any class that was possessed by an archer would be helpless. Not to mention that Lei Gong was a relatively clumsy shield warrior. In this way, Yang Na stuck to Lei Gong's back. No matter how Lei Gong moved, turned, or rolled, Yang Na could always find a way to get behind him. In this way, Yang Na shot arrow after arrow, wiping out Lei Gong's health bar. Lei Gongdang was beaten down the ring with a desperate look on his face. He never dreamed that he would be defeated by an archer in such a way. After a match, the opponent didn't even have a trace of health. Lei Gong had fought for so many years and had never encountered such a thing. As a result, Dugu Jiuqiang was even more flustered. Lei Gong's strength was one of the best in the Sky Dragon squad. He didn't expect that he would lose to a girl, and lose so miserably. The most depressing thing was that Wang Yu's deterrence had not been lifted yet. Seeing Dugu Jiuqiang's appearance, Ningjing Ziyuan said helplessly, "Forget it, I'll go next." Dugu Jiuqiang was still in a dilemma. Experts all had strong egos, especially Ningjing Ziyuan. With the title of War God, he naturally couldn't say that he was afraid that Ningjing Ziyuan couldn't beat Wang Yu. But even Thunder God lost, so Dugu Jiuqiang really wasn't confident. Ningjing Ziyuan wasn't stupid. Of course, he knew what Dugu Jiuqiang meant. However, Ningjing Ziyuan wasn't angry. Instead, he calmly said, "Even old Lei lost. It looks like the opponent has some skill. If I don't go up, no one will win." Dugu Jiuqiang thought for a while and finally nodded. All right, he had no choice. Ningjing Ziyuan had already volunteered twice. As the #1 expert of the Sky Dragon battle team, if he were to reject him again, wouldn't he be doubting his strength? If he was really angered, Dugu Jiuqiang would not be able to bear the responsibility. Moreover, The motley crew still needed to rely on Wang Yu to intimidate others. They might not send Wang Yu up for the third round. Of course, after being opponents with Dugu Jiuqiang for so many years, Wu Ji was as familiar with this kid as he was with himself. Dugu Jiuqiang raised his tail. Wu Ji knew what this kid was trying to do. How could this little trick escape Wu Ji's grasp? After Yang Na returned to the team, Wu Ji said, 2 rounds in a row. Even an expert like Thunder God went up. Ningjing Ziyuan definitely won't be able to sit still. Then will Gundog let Ningjing Ziyuan go up? The others asked. Wu Ji smiled. Of course, Ningjing Ziyuan has to go up. Why? Everyone was confused. Isn't he afraid of facing Old Cow? No reason. It's because he's following his heart. He wouldn't dare to offend Ningjing Ziyuan. Old Cow, you go up for the third round. Both sides chose their opponents. With a flash of white light, Wang Yu and Ningjing Ziyuan were teleported up to the stage. Seeing that the Sky Dragon Battle Team's representative was indeed Ningjing Ziyuan, everyone from Quanjin gave Wu Ji a thumbs up and exclaimed, Old Dog Wu Ji is indeed awesome. You guessed correctly. Wu Ji said coldly, It's not a guess. It's a prediction. You bunch of uncultured people. Watch your words. Dugu Jiuqiang, on the other hand, was not as optimistic as Chuanjin. Seeing Wang Yu on the stage, Dugu Jiuqiang's face darkened. Damn, what he was afraid of really happened. The most excited people were the audience on the stage. Ningjing Ziyuan was a legend of a generation. He was the undisputed, uncrowned king of the gaming world. In any game, the 2 words God of War had become the benchmark of the industry. It was no longer a title, but a symbol. Wang Yu was also a new star that came out of nowhere. He was the strongest rookie king in the gaming circle. Half of the big events in Rebirth were related to this kid. His battle record was brilliant, and his strength did not lose to any professional players, especially since the start of the Pro League. Although Wang Yu did not go up many times, he had never tasted defeat. Moreover, he could always cleanly finish off his opponents every time. It was as easy as slaughtering a chicken or a dog. One had to know that those who could participate in the Pro League were the best of the best. None of these people could last more than a few moves against Wang Yu. It was clear that his strength was far beyond everyone's imagination. Now that these two were fighting, it could be said that it was a battle between 2 kings. Facing a rookie like Wang Yu, Ningjing Ziyuan was not going to admit that he was too old. After going up on stage, he looked at Wang Yu, who had spoken arrogantly to him before. Ningjing Ziyuan smiled and said, I've seen your match. Your playstyle is very interesting. I have to say that you have a lot of tricks up your sleeves. However, a game is a game. Understanding your class is the most important, not your flashy moves. Flashy moves? Hearing Ningjing Ziyuan's evaluation of his kung fu, Wang Yu could not help but raise his eyebrows. Wasn't flashy moves synonymous with flashy fists without substance? Wang Yu was invincible. This was the first time someone dared to say something like that in front of him. Moreover, this guy was a layman, as expected of the legendary God of War. He had guts. Wang Yu loved kung fu all his life. Aside from Mu Zixian, the most important thing in his life was kung fu. Now that he was being evaluated like that, Wang Yu was extremely unhappy. However, Wang Yu was still a master. Of course, he would not let his opponent's trash talk affect his fighting spirit. Therefore, Wang Yu did not retort. Instead, he hooked his finger at Ningjing Ziyuan and made a provocative gesture. His meaning was clear. If you don't like it, then come and try. I'll beat you until you do. Hey, you don't know your place. Ningjing Ziyuan frowned and snorted. He raised a long sword in his hand, and a crescent sword aura flew towards Wang Yu. Battle Aura Slash. Chapter 1278. Warriors had higher priority, and there were many skills that could start with a sudden attack. However, skills that use Battle Aura Slash were extremely rare. Battle Aura Slash had low damage and low priority. It was also a non-directional skill, and the range of the skill was not large. If it was used at close range, it would be difficult to hit the opponent. However, this skill had a temporary binding effect that could freeze the target. control skills were always the first choice. It was reasonable for an expert like Ningjing Ziyuan to start with this skill. Of course, Ningjing Ziyuan was not confident that this skill could hit Wang Yu. It was to restrict Wang Yu's movements. As expected, facing the incoming battle aura slash, Wang Yu casually waved his hand and threw out a psychic wave to cancel out the slash. Just as Wang Yu raised his hand, Ningjing Ziyuan bent down and charged at Wang Yu. Using charge at this distance? Isn't that too much? Seeing Ningjing Ziyuan's posture, the Chuanjin players could not help but be stunned. The Chuanjin players knew very well how strong Wang Yu was. Although there was a slight gap in the process of releasing the psychic wave, the skill's stun time was very short. If the opponent was another Grandmaster of Combat, Ningjing Ziyuan's charge might have hit them. However, if it was Wang Yu, it was a bit too much. After all, with Wang Yu's dodging ability, even if he stood in front of Wang Yu and attacked, normal experts might not be able to hit him. Moreover, there was still such a distance between them. Seeing that Ningjing Ziyuan actually charged at him, Wang Yu hesitated for a moment, then jumped back. At this moment, a cold glint flashed in Ningjing Ziyuan's eyes. You're still a newbie. You're still too inexperienced. At the same time, Ningjing Ziyuan suddenly increased his speed and charged at Wang Yu. Seeing this, the Chuanjin players could not help but cry out, F***CK. Not good. Old Cow was tricked. This is the real charge. Indeed, Chi Wave's stun duration was very short. It wasn't enough for Ningjing Ziyuan to reach Wang Yu's side during the stun duration, but with a backward jump, it was more than enough time. Ningjing Ziyuan had seen Wang Yu's matches and knew that Wang Yu was used to jumping back to avoid a charge. Therefore, Ningjing Ziyuan's first dive was only a feint. He waited for Wang Yu to jump back before he actually used a charge. At this time, Wang Yu had jumped back, and the place where he landed was also within Ningjing Zi's attack range. Not waiting for Wang Yu to land, Ningjing Ziyuan turned into a shadow and rushed in front of Wang Yu. Just as Ningjing Ziyuan was about to send Wang Yu flying, Wang Yu suddenly leaned forward and stomped on Ningjing Ziyuan's head with a thunderstomp. Although the priority of a warrior's charge was high, it was still a normal skill. Wang Yu's thunder attribute was very high, and his thunder stomp was maxed out, so his priority was naturally much higher than Ningjing Ziyuan's charge. Boom! With a thunderous sound, Ningjing Ziyuan was forced back a few steps by Wang Yu's stomp. Wang Yu also used the momentum to do a backflip in midair and landed steadily. The two looked at each other and said in surprise, "What a strong guy." Wang Yu was quite surprised by Ningjing Ziyuan's strength. Wang Yu had fought all kinds of warriors before, so he was very experienced. Ningjing Ziyuan was not a hidden class or a hidden branch. He was just a normal warrior, but he was able to use such a normal skill like charge to force Wang Yu to use a skill to resist. This level of skill was much higher than any expert that Wang Yu had seen. As expected of the god of war, his reputation was not undeserved. However, Ningjing Ziyuan was surprised by Wang Yu. The reason why Ningjing Ziyuan was so strong was because he didn't have a fixed way of doing things. He was completely dependent on his opponent's characteristics. Feinting was the tactic that Ningjing Ziyuan thought of against a newbie like Wang Yu. He didn't expect to be kicked away when he was about to collide with his opponent. To be able to think of such a method in such a short period of time, it was clear that his opponent's reaction speed was very rare. Thinking up to this point, Ningjing Ziyuan squinted his eyes and looked at Wang Yu. He was 120% focused in his heart. When it came to PvP, the most frightening thing was a fast reaction speed. This kind of opponent, no matter the level, could easily turn the tables and kill him. At this time, Wang Yu also took the initiative to rush over and threw a punch at Ningjing Ziyuan. Seeing this, Ningjing Ziyuan calmly raised his sword to block. Wang Yu suddenly retracted his fist and pressed down with his palm, grabbing onto Ningjing Ziyuan's blade. He then pulled back, almost causing Ningjing Ziyuan's long sword to fall out of his hand. Seeing that Wang Yu wanted to snatch his weapon, Ningjing Ziyuan was shocked. Without saying a word, he immediately raised his great sword and used Whirlwind Slash. No matter how strong Wang Yu was, he was still a game character. He was restricted by the rules of the game, so it was naturally impossible for him to catch Whirlwind Slash with his bare hands. Wang Yu chuckled and quickly let go of his right hand that was holding onto his sword. He lowered his head and dodged Ningjing Ziyuan's Whirlwind Slash. He then extended his hand and grabbed Ningjing Ziyuan's ankle and used Ferocious Tiger Strike. Ferocious Tiger Strike was a grab skill. Ningjing Ziyuan was caught off guard by Wang Yu and lost his balance. Ningjing Ziyuan's Whirlwind Slash was forcefully interrupted. He cried out and fell to the ground. Wang Yu immediately stomped down on his head. In the blink of an eye, Ningjing Ziyuan hurriedly rolled backwards. Pump! Wang Yu's foot missed and landed on the ground. Ningjing Ziyuan took the opportunity to get up. He grabbed the hilt of his sword with both hands and used Rising Dragon Slash. Wang Yu jumped back and dodged the Rising Dragon Slash. Rising Dragon Slash's backswing was relatively long, especially when it missed. There would be a short period of time in the air, which was a relatively big flaw. Just as Wang Yu was about to follow up with another attack, he saw Ningjing Ziyuan's longsword press downwards and use Collapsing Mountain in midair. Ningjing Ziyuan's entire body smashed down like a mountain. If it was a normal Collapsing Mountain, Wang Yu could have used his knee strike to forcefully interrupt it. However, Collapsing Mountain was a warrior's ultimate skill. It had high priority and was not something that could be interrupted by a grab skill. Wang Yu's figure flashed and appeared a few meters away. Boom! Ningjing Ziyuan landed on empty air. Without even looking, he swung his long sword and used Aura Slash again. Shing! As soon as Wang Yu landed, Aura Slash flew over and hit Wang Yu's body. At the same time, a flash of sword light froze Wang Yu in place. Ningjing Ziyuan laughed proudly. Hee, I told you to run, but you won't be able to escape this time. Is that so? Do you think you can fix me in place? Wang Yu smiled and slapped his right hand forward. A white aura wrapped around Ningjing Ziyuan and pulled him back. Ningjing Ziyuan was involuntarily pulled to Wang Yu's side. Immediately after, Wang Yu grabbed Ningjing Ziyuan's hair and pressed it down. He raised his knee and used Rushing Knee. Bang! Ningjing Ziyuan was knocked out on the spot. Chapter 1279. Heavenly King carries the pagoda. Seeing Ningjing Ziyuan being sent flying by Wang Yu's palms, the Chuanjin players clenched their fists and thought to themselves, we won. Under normal circumstances, with the Chuanjin players' understanding of Wang Yu, as long as they were sent flying or airborne by Wang Yu, even if it was a boss, it wouldn't bode well for them. Needless to say, it would be even worse for players. However, just when everyone thought that Ningjing Ziyuan was done for, Ningjing Ziyuan steadied himself in midair. Immediately after, Ningjing Ziyuan turned into a ray of light and charged at Wang Yu. Triple Slash. Wang Yu was very familiar with this skill. As a number 1 Sky Warrior, Wang Yu wasn't surprised that Ningjing Ziyuan knew this skill. What surprised him was that he was able to adjust his balance and counterattack with Triple Slash the moment he was airborne. Such strong body coordination was something that Wang Yu rarely saw, even among martial artists. With such talent, why did he choose to play games? Wang Yu sighed in his heart and didn't move. Instead, he switched his weapon to a shield and raised it diagonally. Clang! Ningjing Ziyuan's first attack was blocked and disappeared again. Wang Yu did not panic. He turned around and raised his shield. Clang! His second attack was blocked, and Ningjing Ziyuan disappeared for the third time. Wang Yu swung his shield to the right. Clang! Another crisp sound rang out. The last part of the attack was blocked by Wang Yu. Having his Triple Slash blocked, Ningjing Ziyuan's heart trembled. His hand didn't stop at all as he gripped the hilt of his sword and charged forward. His longsword glowed with a green light as it stabbed towards Wang Yu. Wind Assault Stab. Wind Assault Stab was a very powerful skill. Its attack power was very strong, and its activation speed was very fast. In the blink of an eye, Ningjing Ziyuan's sword was already in front of Wang Yu. Wang Yu hurriedly jumped to the side. Ningjing Ziyuan's sharp sword aura brushed past. Wang Yu's left hand grabbed Ningjing Ziyuan's wrist, and his right hand pushed up under Ningjing Ziyuan's armpit. Ningjing Ziyuan was thrown out. Bang! Ning Jing Ji Yuan fell to the ground. Seeing this, the audience was shocked. Although triple slash sounded like a low-end skill, it was actually one of the most practical skills a warrior could have. Putting aside the damage of this skill, just the 3 stages of displacement alone had greatly increased the mobility of the warrior. Moreover, the 3 stages of displacement could be used to attack the target from different angles according to the caster's will. Ning Jing Ziyuan's attacks were aimed at the temple, the back of his heart, and below his ribs. Every attack was extremely tricky and untraceable, but Wang Yu seemed to know where the opponent's attacks were coming from. He effortlessly parried all of the triple slashes. Such a miraculous prediction was simply unimaginable. After all, there was an element of luck in making predictions. What if it was just Wang Yu's luck? However, Wang Yu's final forceful parry of Wind Strike completely subverted everyone's understanding. Meow, that was a warrior's strongest single-target skill. Even a shield warrior wouldn't dare to parry it with their shield, but now it was parried by a grandmaster of combat. Damn it, could it be that Iron Bull had rewritten the Xuanhuan script? This was basically ignoring the game's settings. Not just the ordinary audience, even the usually calm Ning Jing Ziyuan was stunned by Wang Yu's attack. He looked at the weapon in his hand, and then at Wang Yu, who was not far away. His face was blank, and he didn't know what had just happened. The expressions of the Chuanjin players below the stage changed. They weren't shocked because Wang Yu parried Ning Jing Ziyuan's Wind Strike, but because of Ning Jing Ziyuan. After mixing with Wang Yu for so long, the Chuanjin players didn't know what Wang Yu's upper limit was. In any case, no matter how strong an expert, including the boss, was, they wouldn't be able to last more than a few moves in front of Wang Yu. However, Ning Jing Ziyuan was exchanging blows with Wang Yu on the stage. One had to know that Wang Yu was a martial arts master of his generation, and Grandmaster of Combat was a class tailor-made for him. Ning Jing Ziyuan, on the other hand, was an ordinary person through and through. For an ordinary person to be able to play a game class to this level, they were definitely worthy of the title of God of War. Even the wild and unruly members of Chuanjin were now completely convinced by Ning Jing Ziyuan. After all, if any of them were to go up on stage and fight Wang Yu alone, they definitely wouldn't be able to withstand 3 punches and 2 kicks from Wang Yu. Looking at Ning Jing Ziyuan's shocked expression, Wang Yu didn't take the opportunity to attack. Instead, he stood with his hands behind his back and asked calmly, "What do you think? My fancy controls are okay, right?" Ning Jing Ziyuan stared blankly at Wang Yu and said blankly, "What kind of controls are you talking about? This isn't controls." Wang Yu said proudly, "This is Kung Fu." Kung Fu. The motley crew said something similar the first time they went up on stage. At that time, the audience thought that Wang Yu was purposely joking around and didn't take it to heart. Now that they heard the same words from Wang Yu's mouth again, everyone no longer had the joking attitude from back then. Instead, they suddenly felt that the words were so serious and serious. Kung Fu. Ning Jing Ziyuan's body swayed when he heard that, and he said in surprise, "Does such a thing really exist in this world?" This wasn't just Ning Jing Ziyuan's question, but also the question of everyone in the audience. That's right. Wang Yu nodded with certainty. He had never shown such determination before, because from the beginning to the end, Wang Yu's desire for martial arts had never wavered because of the decline of Kung Fu. Amazing. Ning Jing Ziyuan still had doubts about the existence of Kung Fu, but he still gave Wang Yu a thumbs up and said, "I've lost this match. I'm convinced." As he said that, Ning Jing Ziyuan decisively dropped his surrender and was teleported off the stage calmly. Seeing Ning Jing Ziyuan admit defeat so calmly, the experts were all in awe. At their level, fame and status were extremely important, especially Ning Jing Ziyuan, who was known as the God of War and was the true #1 in the gaming circle. Now that he had lost so calmly, it was hard for anyone to reach such a level of magnanimity. In this match, the audience witnessed the replacement of the old and new experts in the gaming circle with their own eyes. In the gaming world, the replacement of experts was actually very frequent. For some reason, seeing this scene, the audience felt inexplicably touched. The organizers also played the background music, which made the atmosphere even more intense. Due to the massacre of Sky Dragon City, the Sky Dragon team lost a lot of experts. Other than Lei Gongdian and Ning Jingziyuan, the other members were all second-rate players. To be able to make it to the semifinals, most of them relied on luck, and the following matches were not as optimistic as imagined. In terms of the number of top experts, other than Wang Yu and Yang Na, there was also evildoers Run Wild and the Motley Crowd team. In terms of quality, the three experts in the Motley Crowd team were also better than Lei Gongdian and Ning Jingziyuan. In terms of strategy, Wuji was leagues ahead of Dugu Juqiang. The final result of the match was predictable. Chapter 1280. Although the Carefree Battle Team was a veteran battle team, their strength was not that great, and the difference between them and the Sky Dragon Battle Team was not that great. If not for the fact that the Raging Desolate Battle Team had met the 9 Provinces Battle Team early, they probably wouldn't have had the chance to fight their way into the semifinals. Now that they had encountered the 9 States Battle Team, the result could be imagined. Everyone here was a pro player. They were all in the same circle and would often bump into each other. If it wasn't for the fact that they were afraid of affecting the relationship between the two teams, they would have fought each other to the death. This was also the reason why the people of Chuanjin didn't want to encounter 9 Regions team. Damn, being shaved bald, the gaming experience would definitely not be bad. No matter how shameless they were, they still had to have a lower limit. After 2 rounds of competition, the 2 teams in the finals finally stood out. Undefeated King, 9 Provinces team. Rookies in the arena, Motley Bunch team. The audience was not surprised that the 9 Regions team could reach the finals. However, the fact that the motley crew of Chuanjin could reach this stage was absolutely shocking to the vast majority of people. This group of strange people was just an amateur group of normal players that had come here to go through the motions. Who would have thought that they would become the biggest dark horse in this pro league? They had stepped on the corpses of pro players to get to where they were now. Whether or not they could remain dark all depended on this match. There were only 2 teams left in the finals. Of course, it would no longer be a random system. Therefore, the offline bet encounter had already revealed the odds when the motley crew won. 9 Regions team won. 1 Motley Crowd. 1. 2. It seemed that in the minds of most people, the winning rate of 9 Regions team was still very high. After all, in a veteran-strong team, each of the experts in the team could hold their own. Relatively speaking, Chuanjin's group of people needed to be checked. Except for Wang Yu's group of 3, there were very few people who could reach the average level of 9 Regions team. Rebirth was never a single-player game. Even a great expert like Wang Yu didn't choose to be a Lone Ranger. In this kind of situation, it would be very difficult for a few experts to influence the overall situation. Therefore, everyone naturally preferred to join the 9 Provinces team, which was more powerful. Of course, there were also many players who were conflicted about who to bet on. Although Chuanjin wasn't well known, and they were a motley crew with many weaknesses, their individual style left a deep impression on everyone. Clerics who played the halal style. A warlock with amazing predictive ability, harming powerful mages. There was even a legendary Grandmaster of Combat who could defeat the God of War, Ning Jingziyuan. With such a combination, no one dared to pat their chest and say that they would definitely lose against the 9 Provinces Battle Team. Even the members of the 9 Provinces Battle Team didn't have this confidence. At that moment, Chuanjin also saw the odds for both sides through Mingjian Daoxue. To place one's pride, he was incomparably proud of himself. Did you see that? Our odds didn't drop by much when we met Team 9 States. There was no helping it. The difference in experience between the 2 teams was too great. One was the champion of the Pro League for several years in a row, while the other was an amateur team. Even if it was Wild Desolate, the odds would be more than 1, 2. For a motley crew to have such odds, it was enough to prove that many players thought highly of them. Vanity was a child's nature. Seeing so many people supporting him, he naturally felt satisfied. Good for nothing. Wuji rolled his eyes and said, "Our goal is to be the champion, do you know? With Old Cow and me here, you don't really think that Team 9 Provinces can beat us, do you?" This everyone was suddenly speechless. Of course, they wouldn't doubt Wang Yu. As for Wu Ji, this group of bastards didn't even dare to believe themselves. How would they believe a shameless guy like Wu Ji? But everyone also knew that if they said they didn't believe in Wang Yu, they would at most be beaten up. If they dared to not believe in Wu Ji, the consequences would be unimaginable. At that moment, they could only shake their heads and say against their conscience, "No, no, it's just a casual remark." That's good. Wu Ji snorted coldly. In order to prove yourself, take out that little bit of money and bet on our team to win. Everyone was speechless. There's even such a thing? Fame and money have to make us the same, right? Well, this group of grandsons had already prepared for the worst. They planned to bet on Team 9 provinces to win. That way, even if they couldn't win the championship, at least they could get some money as a consolation prize. It had to be said that this group of guys was really trying to maximize their benefits all the time. Wu Ji had been with them for so long that he had already seen through this group of guys. Hearing what everyone said, he wasn't surprised at all. Instead, he said indifferently, "So, you mean that you don't trust me, an old cow? Old cow, what do you say?" With that, Wu Ji turned around and looked at Wang Yu. Wang Yu clenched his fists and said, "I'm only in charge of making a move. You have the final say on how to make a move." "What are you talking about?" Everyone's complexion changed immediately. Meow. Any one of these guys was enough to give people a headache, not to mention the two of them working together. Would they still be able to live in the future? It was naturally not difficult to choose between money or life. Thinking of this, everyone hurriedly said, "What are you talking about? We have unconditional trust in Boss Wu Ji and Boss Iron Ox." "Say it. How much do you want to bet?" 10,000. Wu Ji smiled sinisterly and stretched out a finger. 10,000. It's not much, not much. Everyone hurriedly took out their money pouches. It was only 10,000 gold. If they divided it up, each person wouldn't even get 1,000. They could still afford this bit of money. Wu Ji corrected. "It's 10,000 per person." 10,000 per person? Everyone said in shock. "Boss, is there a need for this?" "Old cow." Wu Ji looked at Wang Yu. Wang Yu looked around at everyone. Everyone shuddered and hurriedly took out their money, saying, "It's only 10,000. It's not much, not much." Wu Ji took the money pouch and also took out a large money pouch. Then, he handed all of it to Mingji and Daoxue, saying, "Bet all of it on us. Remember, be more high profile." "High profile?" Mingji and Daoxue was puzzled. "What do you mean?" Wu Ji said, "It means that we don't have to deliberately hide it. We're betting on ourselves to win." "What the hell are you doing?" Mingji and Daoxue was dumbfounded. As a participant, it was unreasonable to place a bet. This kid wanted to be more high profile. Wasn't he afraid that people would say that it was a rigged match? Wu Ji smiled and said, "You don't have to ask about this. Just do as I say." "All right." Mingji and Daoxue nodded and then went to place his bet. Not long after, among the members of the 9 States battle team, Slick, who had always been inquiring about information, suddenly laughed and said, "Haha, I just found out something interesting. It's about Xuanjin." The people from the 9 States battle team were also a bunch of gossipy dogs. When 3 mountains, 5 peaks, and the others heard this, they immediately pricked up their ears and asked, "Oh, tell me what's going on. Didn't the bets open?" Just now, someone placed a heavy bet of 200,000 gold on the motley crew. 200,000? Who's so rich? Hearing the news from Slick, everyone was extremely shocked. 200,000 gold was not a small amount. How confident would one be to bet on the motley crew in such a situation? Chapter 1281. Ha ha ha. Hearing Slick's words, the members of the 9 States team burst into laughter. If others didn't bet on them winning, they would take out their own money to bet on themselves. This was the same as giving one's only vote in an election. Especially when facing a strong opponent like the 9 States team, they could just throw some money in casually, but they actually spent 200,000 gold. Wasn't this throwing money into the water? These guys must be crazy. However, when 5 Lakes 4 Seas heard Slick's words, he was shocked. Then he frowned and said, "Everyone, don't underestimate the enemy. These guys are stronger than you think." Three Mountains, Five Seas curled his lips and said, "Boss, they're the ones looking down on us." By doing this, they're clearly telling everyone that they'll definitely win this match. "Yeah," Five Lakes, Four Seas said. "Do you really think they're a group of blind and arrogant frogs at the bottom of a well? It's not like you don't know that, Wuji." When they declared war on the Three Evils Manor, they also had the same attitude. At that time, who thought about the final result? Hearing Five Lakes, Four Seas words, everyone in the Nine States team was stunned. After thinking for a moment, Three Mountains, Five Seas said in puzzlement, "Then, you mean that they already have a strategy to deal with us?" "I can't say for sure," Five Lakes, Four Seas said calmly. "When I visited them last night, they were talking and laughing. Their mood was much better than the other two teams. I think they definitely have some strategy." Hearing this, everyone pondered for a moment, and a serious expression appeared on their faces. This group of people in the Nine States team didn't like to ask for advice from their opponents, but at their level of strength, it was inevitable that they would have some confidence. Looking at the whole team, the only one that could make this group of people afraid was Wang Yu. However, after hearing Five Lakes, Four Seas' explanation, everyone couldn't help but start to be wary of the others. After all, things like team battles and strategies could infinitely close the gap between individual strength. Since this was the final match, in order to ensure the players on both sides could display their strength and the audience's viewing experience, the break was relatively long. After a full hour of rest, both teams returned to the arena. Then, under the guidance of the staff, they walked straight into the arena room. According to the usual practice, the first match was still a duel, and the venue was chosen by the previous champion, Nine States team. Five Lakes, Four Seas casually tapped on the arena. Seeing that they were up against a team that had won several championships in a row and was known as an undefeatable legend, even the Chuanjin members could not help but feel nervous. Wang Yu, on the other hand, was very excited. His fight with Peaceful Ziyuan in the last match had allowed Wang Yu to witness the strength of a top-tier expert among professional players. Now that there was such a group of experts standing before him, Wang Yu's hands were itching to fight. He wanted to call all of his opponents onto the stage so that he could spar with them. If the members of the Nine Provinces battle team knew of Wang Yu's thoughts, they would probably be angered to death. Their group had been fighting for so long, not to mention within the country. Even if they were to look at the entire world, there were existences that would cause people to tremble with fear. Wang Yu's thoughts were really not taking these people seriously at all. Just as Wang Yu was getting ready to be the first to go on stage, Wu Ji suddenly volunteered, "Let me do the first round." "You?" When Wang Yu and the others saw that Wu Ji was going to be the first, they could not help but be stunned. Ming Du, who was at the side, mocked, "Are you sure you can do it? This is the Nine States battle team. Aren't you just going to die if you go up?" "TSK," Wu Ji replied disdainfully, "You're talking as if you're not going to die if you go up." Ming Du's face turned red as he said, "Then let old cow go up." As he said that, Ming Du looked at Wang Yu beside him. He knew that as long as Wang Yu went up, there was no reason for them to lose. Hee. Wu Ji smiled faintly and said, "How many old cow are there in our team?" Ming Du was stunned and said, "One, then that's it." Wu Ji said, "We're all going to die anyway. What's the difference between morning and night?" Everyone, that was true. Facing a super battle team like Nine States battle team, everyone present, including Yang Na and evildoers Run Wild, did not dare to guarantee that they would win. In the first round of 5 matches, except for Wang Yu, they had more losses than wins. Why did they have to let Wang Yu go up first? If Wang Yu did not go up, there would still be a glimmer of hope in everyone's heart, and they would definitely do their best. If Wang Yu went up, everyone would know that they were not strong enough in the following matches, and they would definitely lose interest. Although it was somewhat impossible, what if Wang Yu lost? Wouldn't the following matches be? Wu Ji was a guy who was good at attacking people's minds. He definitely had his reasons for doing so. On the other hand, Nine States battle team did not hesitate much. The first contestant was 5 Lakes and 4 Seas. Their starting point was no different from Wu Ji. The difference in strength was too big. In any case, they would win more than lose. In a match that Wang Yu would definitely lose, it would be the same no matter who lost. A white light flashed, and Wuji and 5 Lakes 4 Seas were teleported to the arena. When the two met, Wuji revealed a strange smile to 5 Lakes and 4 Seas. Although 5 Lakes and 4 Seas still had a smile on their faces, their hearts skipped a beat. It cannot be helped. Back then, Wuji had cast a shadow on the people of 3 Evils Manor. Even if 5 Lakes 4 Seas was now the boss of the #1 team in the national server, when he saw Wuji's strange actions against him, he could not help but let his imagination run wild. The countdown ended, and the match began. The advantage of clerics was their endurance. Mages, a class with high damage and explosive power, firmly restrained clerics. Wuji's strength was not as good as 5 Lakes 4 Seas, and his class was also restrained. It could be said that he had no chance of winning. After the match began, Wuji chuckled. He put on an invincible buff on his head, and then directly crashed into 5 Lakes and 4 Seas. F***CK. It's this move again. Seeing this scene, the audience could not help but raise their middle fingers. Meow. Invincible plus self-destruct. This kind of small trick could be used for a surprise attack. Even if it was against a normal player, as long as they were careful, they might not be able to succeed. Not to mention, 5 Lakes 4 Seas was an expert mage. Every time he used it, he really thought that he could conquer the world with just one move. The arena was not big. In the blink of an eye, Wuji ran in front of 5 Lakes 4 Seas. 5 Lakes took a step back and pointed a staff on the ground. A vortex appeared in front of Wuji. Wuji stopped in his tracks, unhurriedly. He swung his left hand forward, and a holy fire slowly flew towards 5 Lakes 4 Seas. Everyone thought that Wuji would use the old self-destruct method, but seeing Wuji suddenly use this skill, everyone was stunned. It was true that mages restrained clerics, but as one of the classes of the Luminous Vatican, clerics were not a class that could be bullied. The silence effect of holy fire was what mages were most afraid of. Chapter 1282. Of course, if he was so easily tricked by Wuji, Lakes and 4 Seas might as well give up. Seeing that Lakes and 4 Seas was about to be burned by the sacred fire, Lakes and 4 Seas unhurriedly raised his staff and cast a spell on his head. As a blue light sprinkled down, the ice element quickly enveloped Lakes and 4 Seas, and then Lakes and 4 Seas was frozen into a block of ice. Freeze. Icebound was a powerful control skill. It could freeze any target into an ice cube. However, the target that was frozen was invincible. Lakes and 4 Seas was indeed quick-witted. He actually threw freeze on his head. Although he couldn't move now, he had the invincibility buff like Wuji. Poof! Wuji's sacred fire fell on the ice and turned into a cloud of white mist. It didn't even leave a mark on the ice. After a few seconds, both of their invincibility ended at the same time. When Wuji saw Lakes and 4 Seas freezer melting, he suddenly took a step forward, raised his staff with both hands, and poked forward with force. Bang! The staff's handle smashed on a Lakes and 4 Seas temple. Lakes and 4 Seas figure was smashed, and Wuji took the opportunity to rush over and hug the smashed Lakes and 4 Seas. Then, he activated self-destruct. Boom! A white light burst out from Wuji's body and instantly drowned Lakes and 4 Seas. At this moment, Wuji heard a walla sound. At the same time, the 5 Lakes and 4 Seas that Wuji was hugging shattered into pieces. The real 5 Lakes and 4 Seas appeared on the other side of the stage. Goodbye. Lakes and 4 Seas raised a staff and threw a fireball at Wuji. Wuji, who had just used Reckoning, only had 1 drop of HP left. Not to mention a small fireball. Lakes and 4 Seas spit could smash him to death. Bang! The fireball hit Wuji's chest, and Wuji turned into a white light. Before dying, Wuji once again showed a strange smile to Lakes and 4 Seas. Lakes and 4 Seas saw this and felt a chill behind his head. In the first round, the 9 provinces team won. Such a result was within the expectations of the members of the 9 regions battle team, so there was nothing to be excited about. However, Not only was Five Lakes Four Seas not happy because of the victory, but their minds were also filled with Wuji's strange smile. There was only one thought in his mind that he could not figure out. Damn it, what is this brat up to this time? Seeing Wuji fall off the arena, the people of Qianjin felt sad for him. They hurriedly went up to console him, saying, "What a pity. You almost won." Of course, these were just polite words. How could they not know that Wuji was much weaker than Five Lakes and Four Seas? The reason why they said so was to leave a way out for themselves, lest others hit them when they were down after they were defeated. Unexpectedly, Wuji said shamelessly, "What do you know? What do you mean by almost? I've already won." Everyone was dumbfounded. They had seen shameless people, but they had never seen such a shameless person. He had been beaten to death and still dared to say that he had won. The people of Qianjin gave him a thumbs up and said in unison, "When it comes to being shameless, we concede defeat. You flatter us." Wuji said politely with cupped fists. Wang Yu was speechless. With Wuji dead, it was time for the second round of the competition. Wang Yu was about to go up when Wuji stopped him and said, "You're our last hope. Stand at the back. You could go up for the last round." Seeing that Wuji stopped Wang Yu again, everyone asked in confusion, "Then who's going up for the second round?" Wuji looked around and finally pointed at Evildoers Run Wild and said, "Chairman Yao, you should be fine going up for the second round, right? It's nothing." Evildoers Run Wild rubbed his palms together and said, "They're just a bunch of useless people. I've never taken them seriously." Seeing that Evildoers Run Wild wasn't afraid of professional players, Wang Yu couldn't help but remind him, "Be careful. These gaming experts aren't easy to deal with either. Be careful not to get killed." TSK. Evildoers Run Wild rolled his eyes at Wang Yu and said, "You're just envious of me." With that, Evildoers Run Wild turned into a white light and flew up to the arena. When everyone saw Evildoers Run Wild's opponent clearly, they were all astonished. Nine Provinces' second-round opponent was actually the archer Nine Heavens God Arrow. From the scope of the arena, the archer had no room to kite. Even if this kid had a strange mechanical shield, he probably wouldn't have a chance of winning against a fighter like Evildoers Run Wild. Did Five Lakes Four Seas send this kid to the arena just to give away points? Just when everyone was puzzled, Nine Heavens God Arrow began to equip the mechanism under everyone's gaze. In the blink of an eye, Nine Heavens God Arrow was equipped with a set of strange armor. This time, the armor was no longer a simple shield, but a full body armor. There were only two small holes on the helmet. It seemed that Nine Heavens God Arrow was also prepared after being stabbed in the head by gigantic Ravager, protecting all the weak points. Seeing the armor on Nine Heavens God Arrow, all the audience was a little dazed. Someone even shouted, "Damn, is this the legendary Iron Man?" It had to be said that the audience's thinking was really awesome. Hearing what everyone said, Wuji and the others also felt that it looked like Iron Man, but they didn't know if this thing could fly. A little interesting. Evildoers Run Wild saw that his opponent took a long time to take out this thing. He couldn't help but grin, jumped lightly, and used a burst fist to rush toward Nine Heavens God Arrow. However, although Nine Heavens God Arrow's Iron Man skin couldn't fly, he ran extremely fast. Before Evildoers Run Wild rushed in front of him, Nine Heavens God Arrow stepped back to the edge of the arena in an instant. His hands aimed at Evildoers Run Wild, and a bunch of crossbow holes appeared on his arms. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. With a sound of breaking the air, dozens of crossbow arrows flew from Nine Heavens God Arrow's arms and flew toward Evildoers Run Wild, who was rushing toward him. Seeing this, Evildoers Run Wild frowned and hurriedly used Eagle Step. Bang! Evildoers Run Wild landed on the ground and stood firmly on his legs. His arms suddenly swung down and turned golden, and then he waved them toward the arrows flying toward him. Hula, hula. After two random smashing sounds, dozens of arrows were all held under the armpit of Evildoers Run Wild. After that, Hung Xing bundled up the dozens of arrows in his hand, and with a loud shout, he exerted force with both hands. Kacha! All the arrows were broken into two by evildoers run wild. Hiss! Seeing this scene, the audience took a breath of cold air. Meow! Dozens of arrows were broken at the same time. How much strength did this kid have? Damn! Nine Heavens God Arrow saw that evildoers run wild was so abnormal, and he was shocked into a cold sweat. Before he could launch a second wave of attacks, evildoers run wild had already rushed in front of him with heavy steps, raised his fist, and punched Nine Heavens God Arrow. Bang! Chapter 1283. However, something strange happened. Evildoers Run Wild's punch did not leave the Ninth Heaven's godly arrow half dead. Instead, the health bar on its head did not drop at all. Seeing that the Nine Heavens God arrow was unscathed, everyone's mind was filled with question marks. Although armor had high defense, it also had a numerical limit. Once the attack exceeded the defense limit, the wearer would lose health. One had to know that Evildoers Run Wild was a grandmaster of combat who put all his points into strength. His equipment was also extremely powerful, so he could be said to be a heavy hand. Everyone had seen it just now. Dozens of crossbow arrows were casually broken in half. Its strength was comparable to that of a boss. Not to mention an archer like Ninth Heaven's godly arrow. Even a shield warrior who did not use a shield to take on Evildoers Run Wild's punch would lose close to half their health. However, not only was Ninth Heaven's godly arrow fine, but it also did not lose any health. It was really strange. Seeing that, Evildoers Run Wild was also slightly stunned. He stepped forward and chased after Ninth Heaven's godly arrow. Just as Ninth Heaven's godly arrow got up, Evildoers Run Wild grabbed Ninth Heaven's godly arrow's head and slammed it into the ground. Boom! Ninth Heaven's godly arrow did not even make a sound before Evildoers Run Wild slapped him to the ground. Then, he pushed him forward. Squeak! After a piercing sound, a deep pit was plowed on the ground of the arena. However, the health bar on Ninth Heaven's godly arrow's head was still very strong. At this moment, the Chuanjin people below the arena were immediately unable to remain calm. Mingdu shouted anxiously, "Damn it, he's already been beaten up like this, but he's still completely fine. Is this bastard cheating in the competition?" "No," Wuji suddenly said. "It's not cheating, it's a problem with his equipment." "Equipment?" everyone said blankly. Even Old Demon's fist could not break through his defense. Could it be that Ninth Heaven's godly arrow is wearing an invincible armor? Oomph. Wuji snorted coldly. "That's not armor at all." "Not armor? What's that?" Hearing what Wuji said, everyone was even more puzzled. The Ninth Heaven God arrow had wrapped itself up like Iron Man. If this was not armor, then what was it? Wuji said lightly. "It's a weapon. Only before the weapon is destroyed will the person behind the weapon not be harmed." Weapon? When everyone heard this, they were shocked and murmured, "To make weapons like this kid is actually a scientist." Indeed, in the settings of Rebirth, armor had a fixed defense value, but weapons did not. Using a weapon to block an attack could offset all damage within the durability of the weapon. The most classic example was the shield warrior's weapon. If the shield warrior raised his shield and failed to destroy it, the person behind the shield wouldn't receive any damage. However, blocking skills didn't count. After all, under the effects of skills, weapons wouldn't lose durability. Just as Wuji said, the armor on Ninth Heaven's godly arrow's body was a machinist's unique weapon. It could change its shape according to the user's needs. The reason why Evildoers Run Wild was unable to attack Ninth Heaven's godly arrow was because Evildoers Run Wild's attacks were completely offset by Ninth Heaven's godly arrow's mechanical armor. Seeing that his two punches did not cause any damage, Evildoers Run Wild thought that his attacks were unable to break through Ninth Heaven's godly arrow's defense. He was overwhelmed with shock and couldn't help but become absent-minded. At this moment, Ninth Heaven's godly arrow's body suddenly turned 180 degrees. Its front was aimed at Evildoers Run Wild, who was pressing down on its head. At the same time, a bowl-sized cannon hole suddenly appeared on Ninth Heaven's godly arrow's chest. Immediately, The light of energy converged in the cannon hole from all directions. A dazzling light shot out from the cannon hole, shooting straight at Evildoers Run Wild. Energy impact. Evildoers Run Wild was less than a meter away from the cannon hole. When he sensed Ninth Heaven's godly arrow's energy impact, it was already too late to dodge. Boom! With a loud bang, Evildoers Run Wild was blasted in the shoulder. Half of his upper body was blasted off, and the health bar above his head was less than 10%. This was only in the game. If Evildoers Run Wild was blasted like this in real life, he would have died a long time ago. Even if he didn't die, with his current appearance, Evildoers Run Wild would have no choice but to commit suicide. At this time, Ninth Heaven's godly arrow dodged backward and pulled away from Evildoers Run Wild. It raised its hands, and the sky full of arrows rained down on Evildoers Run Wild again. Evildoers Run Wild was a brawler who put all his stat points into strength. Now that he was missing an arm, it was impossible for him to block all the arrows. Evildoers Run Wild tried his best to block, but he could only block half of the arrows. The other half hit Evildoers Run Wild, emptying his health bar, and he turned into a white light as he was thrown out of the ring. Seeing that Evildoers Run Wild was defeated, the faces of the Chuanjin players were dark. Damn, this was one of the top 3 masters of Chuanjin. If even he was defeated, the strength of the 9 States team could be imagined. Seeing that his brother was defeated, Wang Yu walked over and kicked Evildoers Run Wild. See, I told you not to underestimate your opponent. Bah! Everyone looked at Wang Yu in disdain. It's all your fault. Raising flags. F***CK. It's none of my business. Wang Yu was helpless. Looking at the Chuanjin players who had started to cause trouble again, Wu Ji secretly rejoiced that he didn't let Wang Yu go up. Evildoers Run Wild was defeated, and everyone was already in this state. If Wang Yu was the one who was defeated, he would probably lose this match. Of course, Nine Heaven's God Arrow wasn't having a good time either. Weapons originally consumed durability to resist damage, and the durability of Nine Heaven's God Arrow's mechanical armor was consumed even faster. After taking 2 heavy blows from Evildoers Run Wild, the durability of the mechanical armor on its body dropped to less than 30%. Nine Heaven's God Arrow hid in the corner with tears in its eyes, quietly repairing the mechanical armor with a small wrench. Damn, this is too abnormal. 2 punches were enough to reduce the durability of the mechanical armor to red. If another punch came, Nine Heaven's God Arrow would probably die on the spot. This set of mechanical armor was all of Nine Heaven's God Arrow's assets. Who knew how long it would take for it to gather another set? However, 3 Mountains 5 Peaks didn't know it was good for them. Seeing that the insufferably arrogant Evildoers Run Wild was defeated, he pointed at Evildoers Run Wild and laughed. It seems that the legendary Kung Fu is nothing compared to the power of technology. Although 3 Mountains 5 Peaks words were sarcastic, it was actually more of a complaint. However, the speaker didn't mean it, but the listener did. Hearing what 3 Mountains 5 Peaks said, the faces of Wang Yu, Yang Na, Evildoers Run Wild, and all the people in the Kung Fu circle in the audience seats darkened. Damn, why was Kung Fu declining? Other than the sectarian bias and the fact that few people suffered, it was more because of the impact of modern technology. Kung Fu was a killing technique. With the current technology, killing someone was as easy as lifting a finger. Who would bother to practice this thing? Therefore, although the people in the Kung Fu circle didn't have any objections to technology, they were still very unhappy when people compared it to Kung Fu. Chapter 1284. The pitiful 3 Mountains 5 Peaks didn't even know that his unintentional words had offended so many terrifying people. After losing 2 rounds in a row, especially when Evildoers Run Wild was defeated, the motley crew was feeling a little depressed. As a result, Wu Ji sent out Yang Na for the 3rd round. Team 9 States player was a knight called a Straw in the Wind. A very arrogant name. As for why he was arrogant, you could go to teacher Butterfly Blue's full-time expert. The ID of Team 9 States players were clearly numbered. A straw in the wind was ranked first, so his strength was naturally quite high. If there were no surprises, this guy could be called the #1 knight on the national server. Although there weren't many knight players, the title of #1 in any class was quite terrifying. A straw in the wind had seen Yang Na's strength and knew that his opponent was an archer who was good at close combat. As a result, as soon as the match started, a straw in the wind gave himself a flame halo. The flame halo had a burning effect and could deal continuous damage to the enemy within 200 meters of the user. Regardless of how high the damage was, continuous HP loss was a rather disgusting effect for all players, not to mention that Yang Na's class was a fragile archer. The Knight class was divided into Punisher and Guardian. The difference between the two classes was quite large. The Guardian's weapon could be switched back and forth as needed, and they could also use charms to attack the enemy, mostly with magic damage. On the other hand, Punisher could only use physical weapons such as long swords and spears. Although they also had magic skills such as Flame Halo, they mainly relied on physical damage. After buffing himself with Flame Halo, a straw in the wind swung his spear, lowered his head, and used charge at Yang Na. If it was a normal player, it wouldn't be strange at all to use charge at the start. After all, they were weak and didn't know how to control the cooldown of their skills. However, for a great expert like a straw in the wind to use charge at the start, it was worth pondering. Could it be that this guy's skills could hit 100% of the time? As expected of an expert from Team 9 States, his every move was full of confidence. Of course, those were just the audience's guesses. One straw in Autumn was a seasoned veteran. How could he make such a low-level mistake as underestimating his opponent? The only reason he had used charge at the start was to force Yang Na to use dodge. Wang Yu and the others could see that the angle and distance of one Autumn Leaf charge had clearly been calculated to completely seal off Yang Na's advance. As expected, Yang Na looked around and saw that there were no blind spots on either side of the incoming one straw in the wind. She had no choice but to dodge to the side. Seeing that Yang Na had been forced to dodge, a straw in the wind smiled. He spun his spear and used total annihilation. Whoosh! The spear swept from left to right. Yang Na had just dodged and landed on the ground when a straw in the wind swept her ankle, causing her to lose her balance and fall to the side. Yang Na was a martial artist, so her reflexes were very strong. After being swept, she quickly regained her balance. The instant she landed, she pressed her left hand against the ground, flipped to the side, and landed firmly next to a straw in the wind. Yang Na's figure was small, and this move was executed cleanly. It was very enjoyable to watch. The camera couldn't help but give Yang Na close-up. So cool. Seeing this scene, the audience couldn't help but cheer. A straw in the wind sweep had very high priority. It wasn't easy for Yang Na to recover after being swept to the ankle, but her posture was still so graceful. It was like watching a movie. It was very pleasing to the eye. Oh, a straw in the wind's expression froze. He turned around and quickly walked in front of Yang Na, raising his spear to stab. Yang Na sidestepped and dodged to the side. She raised the crossbow in her hand and fired an arrow at a straw in the wind, trying to force him back. Unexpectedly, a straw in the wind didn't dodge. He took Yang Na's arrow head-on and rushed in front of Yang Na. Without waiting for Yang Na to retract her crossbow, he used Death's Grasp with his left hand and lifted Yang Na by the collar. At the same time, a straw in the wind's right hand grabbed the middle of the spear and stabbed at Yang Na again. Just as Yang Na was about to be stabbed to death, Yang Na exerted strength from her waist and kicked at a straw in the wind's face. Female players loved to look beautiful, so the game company designed female equipment to suit their tastes. For example, Yang Na's shoes were a pair of high heels. It was just a game, so there was no need to worry about why a running class would wear high heels. In any case, seeing two slender heels kick at his eyes, a straw in the wind jumped in fright. He hurriedly let go and retreated, his attack forcefully interrupted. However, how could Yang Na let one straw in the wind go? She reached out and grabbed one straw in the wind's arm that was grabbing her. Then, she flew over and put her legs together, accurately catching one straw in the wind's neck. "I'm so jealous," Being ridden in the face by this little beauty, the audience's blood was boiling. The eyes of Team 9 States players also flew out of their sockets. That good-for-nothing one straw in the wind's head even buzzed. Then, he heard a system notification. Your nostrils are bleeding. Do you want to leave the game? Who said that fighting in the game couldn't hurt people in real life? Yang Na was able to do it. Just as one straw in the wind was in a daze, Yang Na pulled out 2 crossbow bolts from her quiver. She grabbed one in each hand and thrust them forward. Pussy eye. The 2 crossbow bolts directly entered one straw in the wind's eye. Ah, one straw in the wind screamed in shock. It wasn't because of pain, but because of fear. This was a holographic simulation game. Aside from not feeling any pain, being pierced in the eye was exactly the same as being hurt in real life. One straw in the wind wasn't Xiahou Dun, so of course he was terrified. Hey! At this time, Yang Na exerted force with her legs, and the unprepared one straw in the wind was thrown to the ground. Yang Na stepped on one straw in the wind chest and raised her crossbow to shoot. In a panic, one straw in the wind raised his spear to protect himself. One straw in the wind's marksmanship was ferocious, so Yang Na naturally didn't dare to get too close to him. Thus, she unhurriedly jumped back to dodge and shot from a distance. For ordinary players, vision was the most important thing. With one autumn leaf's eyes crippled, he had lost his vision. No matter how strong he was, it was useless. After all, he didn't even have a target. Was he supposed to just blindly attack? In the end, he was a top-tier expert. One straw in the wind's performance was much better than the others. This guy could actually determine Yang Na's position based on the direction of her arrows and counterattack. Unfortunately, Yang Na's secret technique was called 7 astral steps. Even if one straw in the wind had his eyes open, he wouldn't be able to hit Yang Na. It was even more impossible with his eyes closed. Chapter 1285. Tisk. Seeing one straw of autumn knocked out of the arena, the audience was speechless. It seemed that they hadn't had enough of that erotic scene just now. Although one straw of autumn had lost the match, he had won his life. The audience didn't feel sorry for his failure, but were full of envy. For a long time, dying in the hands of Yang Na had become the most desired way for male players in the game to die. Even one straw of autumn's teammates in Team 9 States envied one straw of autumn's encounter just now. The wretched Slick came over and said with a grin, "Old one, how did it feel just now?" One straw of autumn said unhappily, "How did it feel to be defeated by a lady?" "I'm asking about that," Slick said as he used his arm to mimic Yang Na's posture of clamping her legs around one straw of autumn's neck. "Get lost." One straw of autumn was furious. 3 mountains, 5 peaks, and the others also joined in. "Old one, tell us, Captain, look at them." One straw of autumn was depressed and asked for help from 5 lakes, 4 seas. 5 lakes, 4 seas rubbed his chin and said, "How was the strength? Did you see anything you shouldn't have?" One straw of autumn was completely speechless. Regarding Yang Na's deadly scissor kick, the Chuanjin team had already seen it, so they didn't react as strongly as the others. However, Yang Na's action of shooting an arrow at one straw of autumn's eyes had really frightened them. As the saying went, a woman's heart was the most vicious. Looking at Yang Na's clean and efficient technique, it was likely that she had done this to many people. When the Chuanjin guys thought of how they had offended Yang Na, their eyes subconsciously ached. After the commotion, it was time for the 4th match. After some careful consideration, Wu Ji sent out Mingdu from the Motley Bunch team. Although Mingdu's family had low moral standing and was despicable in terms of strength, they were definitely the strongest in Chuanjin besides Wang Yu and Yang Na. This was related to their professionalism. Wu Ji and the others were either engineers or high-level intellectuals. No matter how good they were at games, they were still brain workers. Mingdu's occupation in real life was a city enforcement officer. His hands-on skills in Chuanjin were only slightly inferior to Wang Yu and the others. As for actual combat experience, he might even be more experienced than Wang Yu. In a holographic simulation game, this kind of combat experience was undoubtedly very valuable. In addition, this kid's unparalleled magic attack power was not inferior to professional players. He was one of the few experts in Xuanjin who had reached the professional level. Mingdu's opponent was called Innocent Twain. She was also a mage, and she was a girl. Seeing the innocent couple on the stage, the audience revealed a blank look. The members of the 9 Regions team were named from 1 to 10,000. The audience was very familiar with the idea of such expert players, but this was the first time they saw the name 2 Little Guesses. In the past, the second best player in the 9 Regions team was the priest February Safflower. How did it become a little girl? Boss, are we going to let her go? 3 mountains, 5 peaks, and the others seemed to be a little dissatisfied with 5 lakes, 4 seas, letting the 2 Little Guesses go up. After all, they were newcomers. They should start training from the most basic level. If they lost in the finals for the first time, wouldn't they lose a point for nothing? It's okay. 5 Lakes 4 Seas waved his hand and said, "Anyway, we have already won 2 rounds. This point is a gift to them. I want to see what this group of people is hiding." It had to be said that this guy 5 Lakes 4 Seas was really meticulous. From the beginning, this kid was very wary of Wuji, especially after seeing Wuji's strange smile. His heart became more and more uncertain. Although the 2 sides fought back and forth in the first 3 rounds, after everyone had competed for a long time, the details of the 9 Regions team's players had been clearly understood. On the other hand, the Motley Crew's players were either strange experts or useless people like Wuji. Because the gap between the 2 sides was too big, 5 Lakes 4 Seas was still clueless about the real strength of the Motley Crew. Therefore, in this round, 5 Lakes 4 Seas decided to send a newcomer who had never appeared in the arena before to test the strength of the Motley Crew. 5 Lakes 4 Seas didn't believe that the Motley Crew was useless except for the 3 experts. The 2 Little Guesses were newcomers to the 9 Regions team. This was the first time they were brought to the finals by 5 Lakes 4 Seas, so they were a little excited. Seeing that the opponent was a girl, Mingdu couldn't help but tease, "Little girl, how old are you? Do you have a boyfriend?" "No." The 2 Little Guesses' face turned red. Mingdu pointed at himself and said, "Then, you have one now." "Eh." The 2 Little Guesses lowered their head and didn't say anything. Obviously, this girl had never seen such a shameless guy. The audience, damn, I've seen shameless people, but I've never seen someone as shameless as this. He's so ugly, but he still dares to forcefully pick up girls in front of so many people. Is the Motley Crew made up of such shameless people? Fortunately, the heavens will take care of the scum. At this moment, a yellow card lit up above Mingdu's head. Motley Crew's player, Mingdu, verbally harassed the opponent. Yellow card warning once. Hearing this, Mingdu quickly shut up. "Serves you right." The audience felt very comfortable seeing this. While they were joking, the countdown ended and the match began. The 2 Little Guesses took out their wands and was about to cast a spell when they saw Mingdu pointing behind them and said, "Huh. That is..." Mingdu's diversion tactic wasn't brilliant. If it was a normal professional player, they definitely wouldn't fall for it. However, this was the 2 Little Guesses' first time on the arena. They were obviously newbies and hadn't experienced the sinister nature of people. Seeing Mingdu's expression, the 2 Little Guesses turned their heads around reflexively. "Hee hee." Mingdu chuckled and raised his wand. A bolt of lightning fell from the sky and smashed towards the 2 Little Guesses. Although the 2 Little Guesses lacked combat experience, their strength was definitely top-notch to be able to be recruited by the team. If it was anyone else, being caught off guard by Mingdu's sneak attack would most likely end the match. And when the 2 Little Guesses heard the sound of the lightning being released, they turned to the side without thinking. Boom! Mingdu's lightning brushed past them. Knowing that they were tricked by Mingdu, the 2 Little Guesses were so angry that their faces turned red. They swept their wands horizontally, and a large wave of flames whistled towards Mingdu in a fan shape. Raging Flames Impact. Not only was the casting speed fast, but the damage was also extremely high. The most troublesome thing was that this was an AoE spell. Other than retreating, there was no space to dodge. But mages weren't fast to begin with. Competing with a spell, in terms of speed, was no different from waiting for death. The two were only a few meters apart. In the blink of an eye, the raging flames had already rushed in front of Mingdu. Seeing that Mingdu was about to be engulfed by the flames, Mingdu took a step back and raised his wand. Boom! Chapter 1286. Earth-type magic had the strongest defensive ability in the magic system. Mingdu's earth wall rose up and directly blocked the two insignificant kids' flame impact. However, at this moment, the two insignificant kids flashed and appeared behind Mingdu. They raised their staffs and summoned two shining ice swords. Ice Sword. It was a level 50 single target attack skill for ice mages. Its damage was equivalent to that of thunder mages. It was a spell that could instantly kill the enemy. Immediately after, the two insignificant kids swung their staffs, and the two ice swords flew out of their hands and toward Mingdu's back. Seeing the two insignificant kids' sudden appearance, Mingdu quickly turned around and cast Ice Wall with both hands, erecting an ice wall in front of him. Clang clang. With two soft sounds, the two insignificant kids' ice swords turned into a blue light and disappeared in the air. Mingdu's ice wall was also shattered into pieces. Seeing this scene, everyone from Xuanzhen and 9 states were stunned at the same time. In the setting of rebirth, the judgment of skills was very important. Physical attacks had the judgment of physical attacks, and there was also a judgment between magic spells. The most important factor that affected the judgment was the player's attributes, apart from skills. For example, a beginner spell like Fireball would not be able to break an intermediate magic shield under normal circumstances. However, if the opponent was too strong, Fireball might be able to break the magic shield. It must be known that an expert like the Scourge team could only be a substitute in the 9 states team. For the two insignificant kids to be able to join the 9 states team, their strength must be very strong. The ice wall that Mingdu cast was only a level 35 intermediate defensive spell. Compared to the advanced offensive spell, Ice Sword, it was a whole level lower. Although Ice Wall was mainly a defensive spell, the fact that the two insignificant kids' higher-level magic was countered by Mingdu really surprised everyone in the 9 states team. As one of the few friends that Mingdu had, Xuanzhen's group understood Mingdu's personality better than anyone else. This kid's personality was very extreme. To play as a mage, one had to increase their magic strength. Not only was the method of adding points to intelligence, but he also had a bunch of equipment that increased magic strength. It could be said that his magic strength had reached a terrifying level. He didn't expect that this silly-looking little girl on the stage would actually break Mingdu's ice wall technique in one move. As expected of a member of the 9 states team, none of them were easy to deal with. The two people on the stage looked at each other and were slightly startled. It was obvious that their opponents' performances had exceeded their expectations. Mingdu knew that his opponent's magic power was not much weaker than his, but his control was far above his. No matter how strong a magic attack was, it was useless if it could not hit the opponent. If this continued, he would only be passively beaten. 2 little guesses was a standard professional playstyle. Whether it was reaction speed, casting speed, or adaptability, they were all top-notch. Once you fell into her trap, there was no room for a comeback. However, it could be seen that this lady clearly lacked actual combat experience. She could only fight step by step and could not do as she pleased. If her opponent did not follow her lead by the nose and did the opposite, then this lady would be in a mess. Frost Ravine. Just as Mingdu was in a daze, the 2 little guesses smashed the ground with their staffs. The ground under their feet suddenly protruded and became a wide crack, splitting towards Mingdu. Mingdu smiled slightly. His figure flashed, and he used flash to fly in front of the 2 little guesses. Mingdu's ugly face was still quite scary when you looked at it carefully. At this time, he suddenly appeared in front of them. The 2 little guesses were immediately frightened and broke out in a cold sweat. They almost threw the staffs in their hands. I feel that if Mingdu was a little uglier, it would not be impossible for him to scare the 2 little guesses to death on the spot. It seems that being ugly is not necessarily a disadvantage. Unfortunately, this handsome cow can't understand it. Damn! Seeing that Mingdu, a mage, was actually able to get close to his opponent, the audience could not help but be shocked. What was going on with this motley team? In a previous round, there was already a melee archer. Could it be that in this round, there was also a melee mage? Of course, Mingdu was not a person who practiced martial arts. If he wanted to be a melee mage, who knew how far away he was? However, against the two little guesses, instead of fighting from a distance, it was better to fight face to face. At the very least, Mingdu was still very confident in his own magic damage. As a town security, Mingdu had extremely rich combat experience. When he flew in front of the two little guesses and saw that the two little guesses were indeed panicking, Mingdu raised his staff and was about to stab the two little guesses in the chest. Seeing this, the two little guesses hurriedly raised their hands and released an ice wall to block. After all, it was only a normal attack. The two little guesses thought that it was not worth using a higher level skill to defend. However, at the same time, as the two little guesses were casting their spells, Mingdu's left hand leisurely pulled out a lightning spear that was surrounded by electricity. He took a step forward and used all his might to stab the two little guesses' stomachs. There was a certain gap between the two little guesses' magic and Mingdu's. Moreover, Mingdu's lightning attribute was increased by nearly 200 points. The lightning spear was also a rare skill, which was many times stronger than the ice wall. A mere ice wall naturally could not block it. Crash! The two little guesses' ice wall was shattered by Mingdu's lightning spear. The lightning spear stabbed into the two little guesses' stomachs without any obstruction. Swish! The two little guesses turned into a blue mist and disappeared in front of Mingdu. Ice shadow! Mingdu was shocked. He quickly turned around and saw that the two little guesses had already appeared behind him. At the same time, they raised their staffs and chanted, "Mystic Ice Prison." Without waiting for Mingdu to dodge, a circle of several meters tall icicles suddenly drilled out of the ground around Mingdu, trapping Mingdu within. Mingdu did not know Ice Shadow and had just used Flash. At this moment, he no longer had any escape skills. Goodbye. The two little guesses raised their staffs, and a circular blue teleportation door appeared above them. A line of words flashed on the teleportation door. Ancient Mystic Ice Sword. Then, ice swords flew out of the teleportation door and shot towards Mingdu. Come in. Mingdu was in the cage. He pointed his staff at the two little guesses and shot a ray of light at them. At the same time, the two little guesses appeared in the cage. Mingdu appeared where the two little guesses were standing. Omitted countless sounds here. The ice swords in the air did not stop attacking because of the two little guesses' movement. The two little guesses had nowhere to hide in the cage. Countless ice swords flew out of the blue teleportation door and shot at the two little guesses, instantly turning them into porcupines. The two little guesses was just a fragile mage. How could they survive after taking a set of awakened skills? They were beaten into a ball of white light and flew off the stage. Chapter 12, 87. Seeing that Mingdu won the game, the faces of the 9 Regions team turned ugly. After all, everyone was somewhat dissatisfied with the result that was beyond their control. The strength of the two was obvious. If it was Wang Yu or evildoers Run Wild who won the game, the 9 Regions team certainly wouldn't say anything. However, it was really hard for them to accept that Mingdu won the game. But who would have thought that Mingdu would make such a move at such a crucial time? The two innocent ones who lost the game were also in an extremely bad mood. They sat in the back row with a sullen face and didn't say a word. 5 Lakes 4 Seas walked over and comforted him. It's okay. Winning and losing are common things in a war. Don't worry too much about losing this time. I hope you can remember that the competition is not only about skills and attributes. After that, 5 Lakes 4 Seas looked at Mingdu, who was not far away, and once again raised his vigilance against the Chuanjin team. The two innocent ones was just a touchstone for 5 Lakes 4 Seas. It didn't matter whether they won or lost the game. 5 Lakes 4 Seas' purpose was to accurately determine the strength of the Chuanjin team. Mingdu was an old man in Xuanzhen, and he knew 5 lakes, 4 seas. Among the many ordinary people in Xuanzhen, Mingdu could best represent the strength of this group of people. After the battle, just now, 5 lakes, 4 seas had a rough understanding of the Xuanzhen team. Their strength didn't need to be mentioned. To be able to enter the finals, they must have the level of a professional master. What made 5 lakes, 4 seas most afraid was the flexible and changeable fighting style of the Xuanzhen team. This group of unorthodox people always played however they wanted to. They never played according to the rules and were led by others. Who knows when they would make a mistake and turn passivity into initiative. With Mingdu's level, it wasn't difficult to see that there would be a lot of unstable factors in fighting against this group of people. 5 lakes, 4 seas always paid attention to winning in a stable way. An unstable factor like Xuanzhen was the biggest headache for 5 lakes, 4 seas. What did it mean to have no moves to win? This group of guys from Xuanzhen fully interpreted this sentence. After winning 2 games, the mood of the Xuanzhen team was a lot better. This was because the strength of the Xuanzhen team was different. The strong ones were like Wang Yu, who was invincible, and the weak ones like Ming Jian, who could not reach the level of a professional master. Therefore, they could only control the first and the third game. According to the point system, the first round was 5 points, the second round was 5 kills, and the remaining 5 could accumulate 10 points. The third round was also 10 points. The 10 points in the second round were not within their control. Therefore, the Quanjin sect could only control 15 points. If the opponent took more than 3 points out of the 5 points in the first round, even if they won the last round, the Quanjin sect would still lose. In this way, whether or not they could gain an advantage in the first round would affect the entire battle. So, whether they could have an advantage in the first game or not would be related to the whole game. Of course, in the eyes of the people from the Quanjin sect, this was also the most stable match. This was because Wang Yu was the last to go on stage. The players of the 9 Regions team were also very smart. Naturally, they also knew who the opponent would send out in the last sentence. Wang Yu was a super expert who could easily defeat War God Ning Jing Ziyuan. Even the top players of the 9 provinces team wouldn't dare to say that they could win against such an opponent. Therefore, for them, this match was equivalent to a plot kill, a match that they would definitely lose. For this group of experts, winning or losing didn't matter. It was just a matter of points. The key was who would lose this round. Everyone here was a reputable person. Naturally, they wouldn't go up and get beaten up knowing that they would lose. Just when the members of the 9 Regions battle team were in a dilemma about who should go up and die, Wang Yu pointed at 3 mountains, 5 peaks, and said, "You over there, do you dare to fight me one-on-one? Holy sh*T. Third bro, you're awesome. Someone called out your name." When the members of the 9 states battle team heard this, they all cast sidelong glances. Then, fearing that the 3 mountains, 5 peaks would implicate them, they quickly took a step back and isolated the 3 mountains, 5 peaks. On the other hand, 3 mountains, 5 peaks asked Wang Yu in panic, "Boss, why did you pick me?" Wang Yu said with a cold expression, "Don't you know why I picked you? I'm talking about you. Do you dare to accept the challenge?" When he heard Wang Yu's words, 3 mountains, 5 peaks almost cried. When did he offend this guy? At this moment, the other members of the 9 states battle team hurriedly said, "Go, third bro. Everyone will die one day. If you go to hell, who will?" That's right. The few people who had already competed agreed. After all, it was easier said than done. Seeing that 3 mountains, 5 peaks didn't dare to accept the challenge, Wang Yu snorted coldly and said, "Humph. The top assassin of the top team of the national server probably doesn't even have the courage to accept the challenge." When the Xuanzhen members heard this, they couldn't help but reveal stunned expressions. After playing games with Wang Yu for so long, everyone knew Wang Yu's character very well. Although he was very strong, he was humble and didn't put on any airs of an expert. This was the first time they had seen him provoking others in such an overbearing manner. Could he have been possessed by a ghost? Wuji even asked evildoers run wild in surprise. "Are you old cow? Or is the one on stage old cow? Why do you speak in such a manner?" However, Evildoers Run Wild also said with a straight face, "Humph, that blind guy should be beaten to death." "That's right," Yang Na echoed from the side. She raised the crossbow in her hand and took a glance at 3 mountains, 5 peaks. Wuji and the others were all stunned. Holy sh*t. In which life did 3 mountains, 5 peaks commit such a sin for these 3 to bear a grudge against him? Could it be that he was the legendary scum of the pugilistic world? 3 mountains, 5 peaks was also a top-notch expert, so his pride was still very strong. Although he knew that he wasn't a match for Wang Yu, he was a little apprehensive after being called out by Wang Yu, so he wanted to admit defeat. However, Wang Yu had already started to mock him. This was a mockery in front of tens of thousands of people. There were at least hundreds of millions of players watching the live broadcast. If he still didn't accept the challenge, it wouldn't just be a matter of being a coward. Therefore, 3 mountains, 5 peaks gritted his teeth, stood up, and said, "Who's afraid of who? You're a grandmaster of combat. I might not necessarily be a match for you." With that, 3 mountains, 5 peaks clicked confirm. With a flash of white light, the two of them were teleported to the stage. Everyone in the 9 States team gave a thumbs up and exclaimed, "Third Brother is really a fierce warrior." But why did that kid target Third Brother? 9 Heaven's godly arrow mumbled, "Who knows? Maybe it's because Third Brother is ugly." At the same time, the players in the audience seats also began to discuss spiritedly. In this arena, Wang Yu had swept through all the experts like he was crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. Even the god of war, Tranquil Ziyuan, had been defeated by him. He was now a legend of a generation. Chapter 1288. No matter what, 3 mountains, 5 peaks was a top expert who had been through hundreds of battles. Although he was a little afraid of Wang Yu, when he entered the arena, his gaze became sharp. He tossed all his emotions to the back of his mind and only had the thought of victory in his eyes. This was the professionalism of a pro player. Treating the competition seriously wasn't just being responsible for himself, it was also respecting his opponent. Assassins were a class that played dirty. When the competition started, 3 mountains, 5 peaks went invisible without saying a word. Of course, the competition had been going on for so long. Pro players didn't have many anti-stealth skills. 3 mountains, 5 peaks also knew that stealth might not be useful against Wang Yu. However, at the very least, he felt a little safer after going invisible. Seeing his opponent go invisible, Wang Yu didn't do anything. This was because Wang Yu's perception was based on the fact that his opponent was looking at him. If he jumped over now, 3 mountains, 5 peaks would definitely run away. When that happened, the back of 3 mountains, 5 peaks' head would be facing Wang Yu. Wang Yu wouldn't be able to sense 3 mountains, 5 peaks' position. Rather than taking the initiative to attack, it was better to wait for 3 mountains, 5 peaks to come over. 3 mountains, 5 peaks was an expert. He definitely wouldn't let go of an opportunity. As expected, 3 mountains, 5 peaks saw Wang Yu standing there expressionlessly without moving. He couldn't help but feel happy. Any skill in rebirth required movement. Seeing that Wang Yu didn't move, he probably didn't have any anti-stealth skills. For an assassin, as long as the opponent didn't have anti-stealth skills, everything was easy. Even if the opponent was a grandmaster of combat who had defeated the god of war, Tranquil Ziyuan. After all, with an assassin's high damage, as long as the opponent wasn't a tank class, a combo would be able to one-shot them. A semi-fragile class, like a grandmaster of combat, wouldn't be able to withstand it. If Tranquil Ziyuan knew stealth, he probably wouldn't have lost. Thinking about this, 3 mountains, 5 peaks activated swift movement. He bent his waist and quietly went behind Wang Yu. He raised his dagger and used gouge on the back of Wang Yu's head. However, at that moment, Wang Yu smiled and extended his right hand to grab 3 mountains, 5 peaks' dagger-wielding wrist. 3 mountains, 5 peaks was shocked when his wrist was grabbed. He hurriedly pulled back. Unfortunately, assassins were agility-based classes. Their strength was no match for grandmasters of combat. Moreover, Wang Yu also had the grab skill, Ferocious Tiger Strike. At the same time, Wang Yu turned around and exerted force with his hand, pulling 3 mountains, 5 peaks' arm behind his back. Immediately after, Wang Yu raised his hand, wanting to kill 3 mountains, 5 peaks with a single palm strike. For 3 mountains, 5 peaks to be where it was today, it was naturally not an ordinary person. Before Wang Yu could strike down with his palm, 3 mountains, 5 peaks suddenly leaped up and executed a charged leap. 3 mountains, 5 peaks' legs abruptly kicked backward, aiming for Wang Yu's waist. Charged leap was a support skill that assassins could use to double their jumping speed by charging up. It was not supposed to cause any damage, but Wang Yu was not familiar with these skills. Seeing 3 mountains, 5 peaks' legs kick backward, Wang Yu subconsciously used his hand to block 3 mountains, 5 peaks' legs. Then he abruptly lifted 3 mountains, 5 peaks. Using the momentum, 3 mountains, 5 peaks jumped several meters away. Then, he rolled forward and activated stealth once more. Just as 3 mountains, 5 peaks thought that he had escaped from Wang Yu's demonic claws, Wang Yu leisurely waved his hand and slapped forward. A white light swept out and wrapped around 3 mountains, 5 peaks' ankle. Following that, 3 mountains, 5 peaks felt the world spin. When he opened his eyes, he found himself in front of Wang Yu. F***CK. In his panic, 3 mountains, 5 peaks raised his hand and threw a white ball-shaped object at Wang Yu. Wang Yu let go of the 3 mountains, 5 peaks and reached out to catch the white ball-shaped object firmly in his palm. The white ball-shaped object suddenly exploded, and a cloud of white smoke enveloped the two of them. F***CK. It's a smoke grenade. When the Chuanjin members saw this, they held their foreheads and said helplessly, "This idiot. Why does he dare to catch everything?" When the audience saw the smoke rising, they could not help but be stunned. They said in puzzlement, "What the F***CK? Reaching out to catch a smoke grenade? What is this kid thinking? He doesn't have any gaming knowledge at all. Could he be a noob?" Someone immediately retorted, "Bullsh**T. A noob can defeat the god of war. Tranquil Ziyuan? Have you seen such a noob before?" Even those experts who had been knocked off the arena by Wang Yu suddenly felt aggrieved when they saw this. It seemed that the concept of veteran gamers equals expert gamers was deeply rooted in the minds of all the players. Reality proved that there were times when the two did not contradict each other. Seeing that Wang Yu had been hit, 3 mountains, 5 peaks revealed a smug smile. The smoke grenade did not deal any damage, but it had a blind effect. Although it did not last long, it was enough for an assassin to kill a squishy class. In such a situation, there was not much difference between stealth and blind. They both prevented the opponent from seeing him. The 3 mountains, 5 peaks had already admitted defeat when Wang Yu was able to counter stealth, but could it be that she could also counter blind? 3 mountains, 5 peaks held his dagger and rolled to Wang Yu's side. He got up and stabbed the dagger below Wang Yu's ribs. But at this moment, Wang Yu suddenly jumped to the side. At the same time, he raised his leg and kicked at 3 mountains, 5 peaks. Wang Yu was tall and had long arms and legs. As for 3 mountains, 5 peaks, his body was hunched and he held his dagger with both hands. It was the standard posture of an assassin. Before 3 mountains, 5 peaks dagger could stab Wang Yu's body, Wang Yu's big foot kicked 3 mountains, 5 peaks face. As Wang Yu's signature skill, Thunder Stomp's attack power was undeniable. Moreover, 3 mountains, 5 peaks position was so accurate. There was no way he could have survived this kick. Bang! 80,000. With a muffled sound, 3 mountains, 5 peaks was kicked into white light by Wang Yu. Ultimate kill. The audience was in an uproar. Everyone had a look of astonishment on their faces. How? How is this possible? Could it be that he was not blinded by the smoke grenade? 3 mountains, 5 peaks was not an idiot. He knew that even if Wang Yu was blinded, his punches and kicks were still quite powerful. Therefore, 3 mountains, 5 peaks had rolled to Wang Yu's side before he dared to attack. But Wang Yu's kick arrived first despite being launched later. It was fast and accurate. It was even an ultimate kill. Not to mention a person who was blinded. Even if he was not blinded, if it was someone else, his kick might not have been so accurate. This was too strange. Could it be that because he caught the smoke grenade didn't blind him? It had to be said that the player's imagination was very rich. They immediately thought of the strange scene of Wang Yu reaching out to catch the smoke grenade. Then they understood. Meow. It was no wonder that an expert like him would make such a naive move. It turned out that catching the smoke grenade could prevent blindness. They had learned another small trick. Chapter 1290. Seeing this scene, the audience couldn't help but laugh out loud. What kind of players were these? An archer's marksmanship was boosted by the system. Even the worst archer would not miss as long as he aimed with his crosshair. Yet, Exquisite Dream's arrow had fallen to the ground before it could even reach its target. Wasn't she a little too unreliable? Could it be that the range wasn't enough? That couldn't be. The mountain wasn't that high. How could there be a lack of range when shooting from above? Seeing this, For Directions smiled faintly. He raised his sword and continued to rush up. However, at this moment, For Directions felt his feet sink. It was as if his feet were being held down by something. He couldn't move at all. Seeing this, the audience hurriedly looked at For Directions statuses. They saw a new status appear above For Directions' head. Binding Shadow, Shadowbound, immobilized for 3 seconds. At the same time, Exquisite Dream raised her crossbow from the top of the mountain, firing in all directions. Archers were the epitome of agility classes. Their attack speed was also the fastest out of all the classes. At this moment, Exquisite Dream didn't hold back as she stood her ground and attacked. Arrow after arrow flew out in all directions. For Directions was also a top-tier expert. Although he was immobilized by Binding Shadow, his hands could still move. He swung his sword to protect his vitals. Exquisite Dream was an intellect archer, so her attack power wasn't high. Furthermore, the Binding Shadow bolt's immobilizing effect only lasted for 3 seconds. Furthermore, she was surrounded by a thick layer of skin and flesh. Even after enduring a wave of Exquisite Dream's attacks, she only lost 1/10 of her health. After being immobilized, For Directions lowered his head and used charge to rush to the top of the mountain. Just as they were about to reach the top of the mountain, Exquisite Dream raised her crossbow and shot out another shadow, binding arrow in all directions. Seeing that the Binding Shadow arrows were about to lock For Directions in place again, For Directions shouted and used Collapsing Mountain before jumping up. The Binding Shadow missed and fell to the ground. For Directions also jumped to the top of Exquisite Dream. At this time, Exquisite Dream had already taken a step back. She raised her crossbow and aimed in all directions. Seeing that For Directions had jumped, she pulled the trigger. Bang! With a loud bang, a thick arrow nail flew towards the heads in all directions. Shock Arrow. Although an archer's priority wasn't high, Shock Arrow was a CC skill that could repel a fainted state. Its priority was much higher than Collapsing Mountain. Linglong Dream's shooting range was less than 2 meters, and her attacks were swift, catching everyone off guard. Since he was in midair, there was naturally no space for him to dodge. He could only use his face to receive the arrow. Duan. With a muffled sound, the arrows in all directions were shot down from the mountain peak and stunned on the hillside. Ling Long Meng reacted quickly and released a shadow binding arrow in all directions to bind them. Following that, her crossbow glowed and began to charge. After charging for 2 seconds, Ling Long Meng pulled the trigger and a series of dazzling arrows shot out in all directions, instantly engulfing them in all directions. At the same time, a line of ancient characters floated above Exquisite Dream's head. Awakening, 1,000 Meteor Split. Before level 60, the archer's most powerful skill was called Meteor Arrow. After charging for 2 seconds, it could fire 30 powerful arrows at once to attack a target. The popular 1,000 Meteor Split was the awakened version of Meteor Arrow. After charging for 2 seconds, it could fire a total of 60 arrows. Moreover, each arrow had an additional magic attack bonus. As an intelligent archer, the damage of this skill didn't need to be mentioned. Being nailed to the ground in all directions, Exquisite Dream took the full brunt of the awakening skill. He turned into a sieve and flew out of the arena in a streak of white light. It happened so quickly that the audience didn't even have time to react. It wasn't until the big screen replayed the scene that everyone saw how they died in all directions. The entire process didn't require much skill. It was just a few well-timed CC skills and an ultimate awakening skill. However, because Exquisite Dream was standing on a high vantage point and had a clear view of the battlefield, she was completely suppressed. Otherwise, whether it was charge or collapsing mountain, she would have been able to quickly close in on them. She wouldn't have been sent flying back down the mountain by Exquisite Dream's arrow. It was no wonder that the ragtag team chose this terrain. The suppression of the high vantage point could make up for the huge gap between the players. Exquisite Dream's victory didn't just surprise the audience. It also surprised everyone from Quanjun. Famous Sword Dao Xue was even more astonished. She can even win like this? Doesn't that mean I can do it too? Don't talk nonsense, Wuji said calmly. From the looks of it, this terrain is only effective against ranged classes. Indeed, the game was different from reality. In reality, occupying the high vantage point gave you a lot of advantages. In the game, the high vantage point only gave you vision and suppression. Melee classes had to attack at close range. These two advantages of being on the high vantage point weren't very useful against melee classes. If it's only effective against ranged classes, then what's the point of choosing this terrain? Famous Sword Dao Xue was puzzled. Wuji said, "It's to increase our chances of winning as much as possible. At the very least, nearly half of our team is composed of ranged classes." Originally, the ragtag team only had 3 players who had a chance of winning. Now that they had the high vantage point, the ranged classes also had a chance of winning. Their chances of winning were much higher than before. Next was the second round. After a round of selections, the players from Team 9 provinces were teleported into the arena. This time, it was 3 Mountains 5 Peaks who were chosen. 3 Mountains 5 Peaks had the strength, and his chances of appearing in the arena were quite high. It was just that his luck wasn't very good. The first time, he encountered Sword Monstrous Ravager. The second time, he encountered Wang Yu. Both of them were martial arts practitioners. This time, 3 Mountains 5 Peaks' luck had hit rock bottom. He encountered Exquisite Dream, an archer. In theory, archers were also countered by assassins. Moreover, the greatest advantage of having high vantage point was that one could suppress the target with vision. Once an assassin turned invisible, one wouldn't even be able to see them. Vision was useless, not to mention suppression. 3 Mountains 5 Peaks knew this very well. When the match began, 3 Mountains 5 Peaks used stealth without a word and disappeared from Exquisite Dream's sight. Then, he rushed straight to the top of the mountain. Exquisite Dream, who was at the top of the mountain, lost her target and could only retreat. If Exquisite Dream were to shoot at the bottom of the mountain, 3 Mountains 5 Peaks would probably be a little afraid of whether or not Exquisite Dream had an anti-stealth skill. However, Exquisite Dream's current actions had directly exposed that she didn't have an anti-stealth skill. Very soon, 3 Mountains 5 Peaks reached the top of the mountain. At the top of the mountain, Exquisite Dream was standing there motionlessly. 3 Mountains 5 Peaks was, after all, a top-notch expert. Now that he had suffered twice, he naturally wouldn't rashly go up and stab her. Moreover, archers also had a trap skill. Exquisite Dream couldn't see her opponent, so there was an 80% chance that she would be behind to prevent traps. Chapter 1291. Test the Waters. Pata. The small stone fell to the ground, and a trap jumped up. Exquisite Dream hurriedly turned around. Right at this moment, 3 Mountains 5 Peaks activated swift movement and charged over. He raised his dagger and smashed Exquisite Dream's temple with gouge. Pung! Linglong Meng was hit by the attack, and a mosquito coil appeared on her head. 3 Mountains 5 Peaks raised his dagger cleanly, and with a combo, Exquisite Dream was sent out of the arena. No one was surprised that Exquisite Dream was sent out of the arena. After all, Exquisite Dream's strength was far from 3 Mountains 5 Peaks. 3 Mountains 5 Peaks was also an assassin, which countered Exquisite Dream's class. It was understandable that he would lose. Next, it was Motley Crowd's turn to go up. Just as Wuji had said, melee classes could not display their advantage in this environment. Although Exquisite Dream was a warrior and was not weak, he was just not weak. He was nothing compared to professional experts. This unlucky kid, 3 mountains, 5 peaks, was still a top-tier expert. He had the title of the world's #1 assassin. Even if he could not beat Wang Yu, he was more than enough to bully normal people. The match began. As usual, 3 mountains, 5 peaks used stealth. As a warrior, not only did Exquisite Dream not have any anti-stealth skills, but he also did not know how to create traps. He could only stand there and wait for 3 mountains, 5 peaks to disappear. It was obvious that 3 mountains, 5 peaks was not a rabbit to Exquisite Dream, but a wolf. 3 mountains, 5 peaks appeared behind Exquisite Dream. Gouge, stun, slit throat, silence, tendon break, slow, backstab, carry away. A set of skills was executed smoothly. Before Exquisite Dream could react, he was sent out of the arena. After killing 2 people from Motley Crowd's team, 3 mountains, 5 peaks finally wiped away his previous humiliation and flaunted his strength. Exquisite Dream appeared, and the system continued to choose players. After a flash, a pillar of light landed on to place one's pride's head. What the F***CK? Seeing that they had chosen a melee class in their party twice in a row, the members of Quanjin Guild could not help but feel miserable. Damn it, this was a black whistle, right? If this continued, they would not be able to get a single point. They could even let that idiot 3 mountains, 5 peaks get a pentakill. 3 mountains, 5 peaks, who had won 2 rounds in a row, was no longer gloomy after being oppressed by Wang Yu in the beginning. His condition was clearly much better than before. However, when 3 mountains, 5 peaks sought to place one's pride, he frowned slightly. Who was the strongest in the motley crew? Wang Yu, a grandmaster of combat. Who was the second best? Evildoers Run Wild, and a grandmaster of combat. From this, it could be seen that the grandmasters of combat in the motley bunch battle team were different from the grandmasters of combat that they usually saw. They were definitely not to be trifled with. To place one's pride might look young, but Wang Yu had clearly left a shadow in 3 mountains, 5 peaks heart. Seeing that his opponent was a grandmaster of combat and a grandmaster of combat who specialized in kicking crotches, 3 mountains, 5 peaks could not help but tremble. To place one's pride's idol in the game was Wang Yu. He also liked to intentionally imitate Wang Yu's words and actions. After entering the arena, To place one's pride imitated Wang Yu's tone and pointed at 3 mountains, 5 peaks. You come up. 3 mountains, 5 peaks. Damn it, he's too arrogant. When 3 mountains, 5 peaks saw to place one's pride's attitude, he felt a little afraid. However, there was no reason for him to back down after being provoked like this. Therefore, he braced himself and activated stealth to meet him. After running to the top of the mountain, 3 mountains, 5 peaks noticed that to place one's pride was standing still, just like Wang Yu. 3 mountains, 5 peaks was greatly shocked. Could it be that this guy could also catch a knife from behind? When he thought of this, 3 mountains, 5 peaks did not dare to act rashly. He hid in a corner for a full 10 minutes. When 3 mountains, 5 peaks saw the impatient expression on to place one's pride's face, a trace of doubt arose in 3 mountains, 5 peaks' heart. Throw a stone to test the waters. After thinking for a moment, 3 mountains, 5 peaks picked up a stone and threw it at to place one's pride's head. Bang! The stone smashed into the back of to place one's pride's head, causing to place one's pride to sway slightly. He turned around and scolded, "Shameless! Throwing a stone, do you dare come out and fight me?" F***CK. At this moment, 3 mountains, 5 peaks finally realized that he had been fooled. He could not even catch a stone, so how could he catch a knife? He was like a fool, staring blankly for a long time. In his rage, 3 mountains, 5 peaks circled to place one's pride's back and use gouge, slit throat, tendon break, backstab. He used the same old moves as before, turning to place one's pride into white light. Did you see that? This was what an expert was like. The skills he used were all ordinary skills, and the combos were the most ordinary combos. However, when using his hands, he could turn something rotten into something miraculous, allowing him to defeat 3 opponents in a row. To place one's pride was also defeated. Everyone from Xuanzhen could no longer sit still. In terms of strength, there was only 3 mountains, 5 peaks. Apart from Wang Yu and evildoers run wild, no one from Xuanzhen was his match. Therefore, everyone said to Chun Xiang, "Brother Chun, cast a spell." "Sigh." Chun Xiang responded. He put his palms together and started praying. 3 pure ones above, when I travel the deep waves, hallelujah. At the same time, the light pillar for choosing people started flashing. Finally, it slowly landed on Mingjian Daoxue's head. Everyone from Xuanzhen stared at Chun Xiang. Chun Xiang was shocked and hurriedly shouted, "Grandmaster, save me." It was unknown if the Grandmaster had really heard Chun Xiang's words. The light pillar jumped slightly and landed on Mingdu, who was beside him. Phew! Everyone from Xuanzhen heaved a sigh of relief. Chun Xiang could not help but wipe the sweat off his forehead. With Mingdu up, everyone was relieved. Who had the most advantage in this situation? It was not Yang Na or Exquisite Dream. It was the mage. The suppression from the high ground allowed the mage to attack freely within the effective range. With Mingdu's magic damage, it was not an exaggeration to say that he was a mobile cannon. Before Mingdu went up to the stage, Chun Xiang muttered a few words in Mingdu's ear. Mingdu smiled and nodded. After entering the stage, Mingdu shaded his eyes and looked from top to bottom. Then, he measured the casting distance. The match began. 3 mountains, 5 peaks disappeared into stealth again. Meanwhile, Mingdu stared at the place where 3 mountains, 5 peaks disappeared and started counting down in his heart. 3, 2, 1. At this point, Mingdu suddenly raised his staff with his right hand and formed a lightning seal with his left hand. Boom, boom, boom. A dark cloud suddenly condensed in the sky and covered the hillside. Then, bolts of lightning struck the ground from the dark cloud. At the same time, a line of ancient Chinese characters appeared above Mingdu's head, awakening, profound meaning of thunder, thunderstorm. Thunderstorm was the awakened version of the strongest AoE skill of the thunder element, thunderstorm. It could instantly cover a specific area with powerful lightning, dealing a devastating blow to all targets within the area. Radiant City's magic damage was extremely high, and its lightning attribute was terrifying. Furthermore, it had doubled its damage when casting hand seals. Thus, its current damage was worthy of being called a devastating blow. Chapter 1292. After receiving the notification that 3 mountains, 5 peaks had been killed, Mingdu proudly struck a victory pose. The members of the 9 states battle team, on the other hand, revealed astonished expressions. 3 mountains, 5 peaks had been in stealth. At such a distance, even if Mingdu had an anti-stealth skill, he probably wouldn't be able to use it. As a result, everyone was certain that Mingdu couldn't see 3 mountains, 5 peaks. No matter what class, attacking an opponent required target. If one couldn't even see the opponent, then using a skill will be a blind attack. However, Mingdu's skill was clearly used at the perfect time. It was very clear that the instant Mingdu entered the 3 mountains, 5 peaks stealth mode, he had already started to calculate the 3 mountains, 5 peaks coordinates based on its movement speed. Mingdu's judgment was also quite good. Although he wasn't as precise as Spring Soar, he couldn't stop this guy's ruthlessness. An AoE skill directly bombarded them. It didn't matter where 3 mountains, 5 peaks was. As long as they were within the range of the skill, they wouldn't be able to escape death. The advantage of long-range suppression from the high ground was displayed to the extreme. Such a method seemed simple and crude, but in reality, there was finesse within it. Everyone was a top-tier expert in the professional circle, but they had never seen a mage fight an assassin like this. There was only one path up the mountain. 3 mountains, 5 peaks wanted to go around it, but it was blocked by the scenery. As a top-tier expert, he couldn't just stand at the bottom of the mountain and waste time with his opponent. Even if he ended up in a draw, he would still be at a disadvantage. After 3 mountains, 5 peaks died. Team 9 Province's third player was called Universal Desolation. Universal Desolation was tall and sturdy. He held a giant shield in his hand. His class was obvious. He was a shield warrior. Shield warriors were the most special of all the tank classes. Compared to paladins, shield warriors didn't have an advantage in terms of damage and defense. However, there was one thing that paladins couldn't compare to. A shield warrior's shield was a weapon. As long as the shield wasn't broken, no matter how high Mingdu's attack was, he wouldn't be able to harm the shield warrior. Of course, paladins also had shields as weapons. However, according to the system, paladins were called weapon mimicry. It was a skill with limited defense. It was basically the same as Wong used Chi Wave Shield. It would shatter after one hit. It was fundamentally different from a shield warrior's shield. Because of this, a shield warrior's strength was mostly determined by his shield. For example, Yin Lao Heir's personal strength was not at the level of a professional player. However, with his god's shield, the current Yin Lao Heir was able to fight evenly with a first-rate professional player. This was the importance of equipment. The shield in 6 directional 8 Desolation's hands didn't look very good. Although it looked quite heavy like a door, its design was extremely shabby. For a top expert like him to carry such a shield seemed out of place. It wasn't that everyone was judging a book by its cover. In the game, the better the equipment, the more high-end its appearance. The shield in Universal Desolation's hand didn't look high-end at all. Seeing that his opponent was a shield warrior, Mingdu was slightly delighted. What was the scariest thing about piking between warriors and mages? Naturally, it was kiting. If a warrior's speed wasn't fast enough, he would be killed by the mage. Moreover, shield warriors were famous for their short legs. From a foot of the mountain to the top, Mingdu was confident that he could grind Universal Desolation to death. However, Universal Desolation seemed very confident in himself. After the match began, not only did Universal Desolation not stand at the foot of the mountain, but he also raised his shield and walked up the mountain unhurriedly. Seeing that Universal Desolation was so arrogant, Mingdu didn't want to spoil him. He went straight to meet him. When Universal Desolation stepped into Mingdu's attack range, Mingdu raised his staff and summoned a row of icicles, which he threw at Universal Desolation. Icicles was a basic skill of mages. Its damage wasn't high, but it had a 60% movement speed reduction effect. It was the strongest movement speed reduction effect among all the ice magic mages had. Therefore, mages like to use icicles to slow their opponents down before kiting them. Faced with the icicles thrown by Mingdu, Universal Desolation didn't dodge. Instead, he raised a shield in front of him. Clang, clang, clang. A series of crisp sounds rang out as Mingdu's icicles all collided with the Universal Desolation shield. At the same time, ancient inscriptions lit up on the spot where the icicles collided with the Universal Desolation shield. Mingdu's icicles immediately turned into magic elements and attached themselves to the Universal Desolation shield. The Universal Desolation shield glowed faintly, and it seemed to look better than before. Seeing the Universal Desolation shield absorb the magic, Mingdu suddenly felt a sense of déjà vu. The Chuanjin members below the stage were also stunned. Why does this scene look so familiar? At this time, Yin Lao Heir said, "This is a magic shield. It can absorb magic to charge. We've seen it before. That shield is still in my hands." No wonder. Everyone came to a realization after hearing this. Magic shields were very rare. Although the shields used by ordinary shield warriors were also magic resistant, with the destructive attack power of mages, the shield's block value will be depleted in a few hits. The magic shield's ability to absorb magic for its own use was quite effective against mages. However, this was also reasonable. After all, Universal Desolation was a top-tier professional expert. How could he carry a trash shield in his hands? On the stage, Mingdu also realized that the shield in Universal Desolation's hands was a magic shield. This kind of shield was very effective against mages. He definitely wouldn't be a match for it in a head-on clash. Hence, Mingdu had an idea. He moved a few steps forward again to a position not far from universal desolation. Then he pointed his staff at the ground and flicked it up. After the ground twitched, a circle of earth walls rose around universal desolation, trapping universal desolation inside. Immediately afterward, Mingdu made a hand seal and pointed to the sky. Boom! A thick thunderbolt descended from the sky and blasted toward universal desolation. Universal desolation calmly raised his shield over his head. The thunderbolt hit his shield, and the magic inscriptions lit up. Mingdu's thunderbolt quietly sank into the shield. The shield lit up again, and its original shabby appearance became simple and unadorned. At this moment, Mingdu raised the staff in his right hand, and flames rose under universal desolation's feet. The flames also contained lightning. Lightning and fire intertwined. The key to Shield Warrior's strength was the temporary invincibility caused by the shield. However, the area that the shield couldn't cover was another story. Your shield is amazing, right? Why do I have to hit your shield? I'll set fire under your feet and see if you don't die then. Mingdu's mixed spell was a representative AoE spell in the early days. Although it couldn't keep up with the times, fire and lightning were the two most damaging elements among all spells. The combined damage was still terrifying. After being burned by Mingdu, Universal Desolation's health bar began to drop. At this moment, Universal Desolation was surrounded by Mingdu's earth walls, so there was no way out even if you wanted to. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.